Yeah.
Okay, alive.
Ron? Good evening, everyone. This is the Irvington Planning Board meeting of November 2nd, 2022. The first order of business will be the minutes of October 6th. Sarah, you prepared them? Did we get any comments?
We received comments, they're ready for approval.
Okay. Anybody have comments on their copy of the minutes that were distributed by Sarah?
No.
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. Let me introduce everyone who's here for the village this evening. There's Sarah Palermo. She's the gatekeeper on Zoom. Ed Marin is the building inspector. Doug Hahn is the consultant engineer. Mary Ann Stessage is our village attorney. And on the board, we have Lori Davidowitz, David Davidowitz, and Dan McGillicuddy. I'm Caesar Manfredi, the chairman. This is Mike Smith, and that's Kevin Thurman. Okay, the order for this evening. Number 1 will be 49 Kingsley Close. Number 2 will be Field Terrace. Number 3 will be 30-40 South Broadway. Number 4 will be Seaman Industries, better known as the Nevis property at Columbia University. That's 136 South Broadway. Number 5 will be 33 Maple Street. Number 6, 9 Hancock Place. Number 7, 242 Harriman Road. And number 8, 9 Gray Rock Terrace. Okay, moving right along. We'll start with number 1. That's 2021-24 49 Kingsley Close. It has a 21 number of the year because this was previously approved back in 21, and they're coming back for a revision.
Hello. Tom Malone, Fergus Malone Architecture, representing.
John, you're on mute.
Oh, hold on. Can you guys hear me now?
No, your lips are moving and nothing's happening.
I'll see you next month.
Can you
Must be
ask
those
him
new
to
glasses you're
unmute?
wearing.
Maybe if I put them up? No, nothing.
Now you got him talking to himself.
I'm starting to panic.
Well, can we ask him to unmute?
Let's give it a time. 10.
No.
No, you can request on the,
It might be us.
you can request on our end.
Sarah just ran upstairs, so hang on 1 second, John.
John, it might be us. Hold on.
Sarah just ran upstairs to check the volume on the machine. You do sign language, we can approve it that way.
Well, now that you can't answer me, how come only your projects come back for revisions? You're the revision king.
We did have 2 Malone months.
Our gatekeeper for Zoom is upstairs trying to straighten this out so we can hear the applicants and the public, I guess.
Is there a remote there on the desk? Is there a remote
No, not that I see.
on any of the desks?
Check.
There's a desktop here.
Accessibility shortcut. Items voice guide on.
That wasn't.
I don't think so.
The voice guide is off. What is the voice guide?
Yeah, that's all.
Caption to items on. Set to on accessibility shortcut. Items caption on.
And especially.
Flipping helium.
rid of the X.
There's a chat, maybe somebody knows something.
Yeah, we can't talk to him. Oh, yeah.
To me, that
Must
must
have.
you.
It's probably Larry.
Probably knows something. It's all about him.
You got Larry's cell, you can call him.
Does he check for a meeting?
He's on. John, talk.
He won't back.
Check. Can you guys hear me?
No.
No, Sarah's upstairs. We're texting back.
You're getting Larry.
She's working on it right now.
Hebrews. Israel.
His lines. They went to.
We're in a little rain delay.
That's good.
I don't know what this is.
It's based on function. It's a doctor. I'm the doctor wants to.
I know.
No, he tweeted that, he tweeted his approval of it. Did you hit find out? Oh,
I don't know, maybe you can hold it and do it.
it's just.
Cancel the all next month.
And which is.
Accessibility shortcut. Items voice time off.
Yeah.
Oh.
John, talk.
Check.
Yeah.
That's good.
All right. Cool.
Okay, looks like we're back in business.
No, so it might be a little out till Sarah gets back.
Should we hold off until Sarah gets
No, I'm not gonna touch it again.
back?
Do you want me to turn down on this side? Is that something I can do?
I don't know.
See if you can share the screen as long as you may not need it. Put up whatever you're putting up. Uh-oh.
Where did I put it? Oh, here it is.
Oh, good. That works. All right, John, go ahead.
So the change is to relocate, there were existing condensers in this area here that we're keeping in place, and we were adding a new generator over here on this side of the driveway. In terms of the length of the piping and the improved condition, we looked at moving the condensers to this location here and moving the generator to the location where the condensers are now on the existing. So that's what the change is for. The condensers are outside of the wetland setback, they're inside the side yard setback, and there's an easement on the side yard. We have additional plants shown. We can array the skip laurels that we have on this side of that. I don't. Ed, is there a reason we can't plant them in the easement? They're just shrubs, right? Take them out if you have to take them out.
I wouldn't plant them. I would plant them on the edge of the easement. I wouldn't plant them in the easement.
Just like right along. There's a condensers tied to the condenser.
Right.
Yeah.
I raised it.
You put some shrubs there.
Yeah. So that's the limit.
The overall planting plan that we approved doesn't change. Is that correct?
Correct.
I didn't hear you.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and generator is not up there. It's not by the property line. It's
Right.
down, it's there, so. Okay. Laura, you have any questions?
No,
No questions.
I have none. Mike,
No questions. Nothing.
thank you.
is there anything from the public on this?
There's somebody raising their hand to speak.
Could be from the voice one.
That hand was up before, so.
Oh.
Well, you might as well see who it is and maybe it relates to this, I don't know.
They just lowered their hand.
Okay.
So there's nobody else raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay. Mary Ann, do you have a resolution on this?
Whereas on August 4th, 2021, the planning board granted site development plan approval to Hannah and Jonathan Arkin to build a deck on their house at 49 Kingsley Close, which is located within 100 feet of a village wetland. And whereas in October 2022, applicants applied to revise the site development plan to relocate the HVAC units and generator to an area which is not in the wetland setback. And whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in a memorandum dated October 28th, had no comments. The planning board held a public hearing on November 2nd. The action is a type 2 action under secret and therefore requires no environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants revised site development plan approval for the construction reflected in the drawings entitled Arkin Residence, prepared by Ferguson Malone Architecture, subject to complying with the planting list included in the August 4th, 2021 approval.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, guys.
You got any questions on that, John?
No, I'm good. We'll match the counts that are on the planting plan. Sounds
Any
good.
questions on the resolution from the board?
No.
All right, let's do a vote. Lori,
Approved.
Approved.
that was Dan. I approve. Caesar,
Approved. Approved.
Mike and Kevin. Okay, we're all set. You want to bring that over to Mary Ann? All
Thank you
right,
very
we're
much,
going
guys.
to- Thanks a lot, John.
Sarah.
Haven't seen you in a while. I hope we see you again someday.
We're working on some stuff. We'll be in soon.
Not
Thanks.
for a revision.
Not too.
Right, for you want new stuff. I know. We'll get you some new stuff. All right, thanks, guys.
All right, we're moving on to number 2, which is 2022-21 Field Terrace.
Good evening. Can everyone hear us okay?
Yeah.
Great. I think just the Up Studio would need to be promoted as a panelist. Otherwise, I think our team is all here. Great, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Casey Brenner with the law firm Zarin and Steinmetz. Unfortunately, David Steinmetz had a triple header tonight, so he's not going to be able to make it. We represent Emily and Jamie.
You mean he's watching the World Series?
Right, that's what I suspect. We represent Emily and Jamie Sahara in connection with their application for site development plan approval for a proposed zoning compliant single family home on their property on Field Terrace Avenue. With me tonight is Greg Merritt of Bayview Landscape Architects, as well as the project architects from the Up Studio and Alan Pilch, the project engineer. We're here tonight to request that your board issue site development plan approval. We feel, and we hope your board agrees, that it's appropriate at this time for the board to close the public hearing and adopt a resolution issuing site plan approval, of course, with applicable conditions. The Sahara's application has been before you since approximately April of this year, I believe, which was when the site capacity determination was issued. The Saharas and our development team have continuously worked very diligently and cooperatively to ensure that your board's concerns and any concerns of your consultants have been addressed. We feel we've accomplished this in our latest submission, which is before you. In addition, as your board has acknowledged, we would like to reiterate that the Saharas have continued to spend and are willing to continue to spend a lot of time, effort, and money to address the concerns that have been raised by their neighbors, the Hallecks. And a lot of these issues are not a direct result of the project. In fact, we've taken several steps with respect to stormwater management initiatives to address pre-existing drainage issues on the Halleck's property, as we've discussed in the prior meetings. In addition, I believe we've discussed this at previous meetings, but when the two properties were subdivided in 1994, an easement was created for a proposed sewer connection to the Sahara property, and that's shown on a filed map. Thus, when the Hallecks purchased their property a number of years later, they purchased it well aware of the fact that they were buying property that was subject to an easement, and that a sewer line could be installed on their property if the Sahara property were to ever be developed. And unfortunately, to everyone's knowledge, a declaration or easement agreement was never recorded that clarified any obligations as to landscaping or trees or restoration of the easement area. But in our shared interest of tree protection, our team has very carefully assessed the easement area and the surrounding area on the Halleck property. And we've proposed to slightly reroute the sewer line in a way that we think avoids negative impacts to trees to the maximum extent feasible. Only 2 trees are required to be removed as a result of this route, which we've proposed to replant native species to replace those 2 trees to be removed. We have drafted an easement agreement to memorialize this modified sewer line easement, and that agreement would be recorded in the chain of title of both properties. We understand this would be a requirement to execute and record the easement agreement before any permits could be issued down the line, either for the sewer work or any construction on the Sahara property. A copy of the easement agreement has been sent to the Hallecks and their attorney for review. We've also provided Marianne with a copy, and she's had a chance to review it. We understand she's satisfied with the language in our draft. Our clients, who I think are in the Zoom audience tonight, are very pleased to continue to work cooperatively and to be good neighbors. We received the Hahn memorandum yesterday, which set forth a few minor comments related to our engineering plans, and Alan is on tonight if there are any particular questions about that, but I believe he's confident those can be readily addressed. We hope that this can be accomplished as conditions of the site plan approval. We have also received, I think it was really just one substantive comment remaining from Suzanne Nolan, the village's consulting landscape architect, relating to a tree report that was submitted by Claire Halleck. That Bartlett tree, the arborist, that it's my understanding that tree report was completed before we were proposing to modify the easement area, but our team has reviewed it, and I will turn it over now to Greg Merritt to discuss this, and I also know that he can fill you in. He was able to speak with Suzanne this afternoon about that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. That was, if that was off the top of your head, terrific. If you were reading off a teleprompter, you did very well there too.
Thank you,
Go ahead.
Caesar. I'll never tell.
You can tell Dave that I said that.
I will.
Good evening. My name is Greg Moret, Bayview Landscape Architecture. I guess I'll pull up the plan to help facilitate this conversation. So since the last meeting and presentation, there was a survey conducted on the neighboring Halleck property. They identified a total of 14 trees.
Excuse me, hold on. If you could outline with your cursor, what's Halleck's and what's yours, so that we understand whose property is what.
absolutely. So this is effectively just the Halleck property. The corner of the Sahara's property is up here. So this is really just the Halleck property being shown on this drawing.
Thank you.
Is that, and the dark dotted line that cuts across is the proposed sewer easement, and that little angle was proposed as opposed to being straight, the angle in this area in an effort to just better navigate the existing trees. So there's 14 trees in that in this general vicinity. 2 specifically would need to be removed. That's sort of right in the center and of the portion of the easement. We have specified on our plan that those were replaced with 2 native species as approved by Suzanne Nolan, the village landscape architect. If I will just read Ms. Nolan's site plan review, her only recommendation / requirement was the applicant should update the tree inventory for the easement area on the Halleck property with the information provided by Bartlett tree experts. The Halleck's arborist proposed tree removal should also be accurately identified. I was slightly confused by the wording of that, so I was able to speak with Ms. Nolan this afternoon, and she was nice enough to give me a few minutes. And basically what she just said is that the logical next step might be to update the varieties of trees as per an inspection by Bartlett, but she fully understood and agreed that the 2 trees had to be removed. She appreciated the remediation and replanting of 2 native species of oaks, and that the ground plane would be restored with with native vegetation. So her comment really summarized was just that if desired by the Halleck's or any parties wanted to further clarification on the tree varieties, that having an arborist do a species inspection might be a follow-up step, but otherwise, the removal of 2 trees and the replacement is satisfied as per her review. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Have any questions on the board?
Not at this point.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go to the public. Any comment from the public?
Yes, Claire Halleck has her hand raised.
Okay.
Hi, it's Claire Halleck. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry, yes?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, okay. And unfortunately, I don't have a teleprompter, so forgive me, I'm gonna have to read some of my notes, but first, I want to thank the Saharas for the help on the catchment areas and the extension of the berm, which we had all agreed upon and which I understand are going to be added to the drawings or have been added to the drawings. And it's significant help. So thank you for that. And so we are just looking now at the easement. So I agree with Casey on that as well. So, but I just wanted to say that, due to the location of the sewer on Ardsley Avenue East, I see they can't really move the sewer line away from the cluster of the trees, which I originally had hoped, because as I mentioned, I do have an area without a bunch of trees. It just would have been cheaper and simpler. But as they have just noted, and as I've shown in some of the pictures that I've sent, now that I've staked the property, so I know exactly where the sewer line is. Unfortunately, there are a bunch of trees that are at risk. I understand the 2 that they're looking to replace. I have one question, which is when they replace them, they're large mature trees. How big are the replacement trees? I know they can't do a similar size. Will that be put into the plans or the memos or however it works? That's one question I have. But I can finish up if that's best with my comments, and you can let me know how that works. But I've sent some pictures on you, so you have a sense of what it looks like from my end. I suggested to the Saharas through their lawyers about 10 days ago that they consider a landscape bond on our behalf that would put in place for 5 years that would cover off the risk of any damage to the root structure of some of the trees that are there now. Suggested $50,000, and that's based on, as I said in my letter to you guys, that's based on our landscaper going to a nursery and giving us a cost of, certain size trees with the shipping, the removal of the existing trees, and obviously it's pretty expensive. So he estimated approximately $25,000 per tree, depending on the type of the tree itself. As I see it, and there was a picture that I sent, which I hope you could see, it showed the blue stakes that they put onto the property. There are 5 trees that I think are definitely going to experience root damage, but 2 maples that are right by the fence in our yard, right where the sewer line goes out, that are definitely within, I'd say 6 to 8 feet, their roots are going to be deeply cut by the sewer line. And I understand there's nothing they can do about that to avoid it. But, trees, as I have the research I've now done, it seems that they, within 2 to 5 years is when you see that the tree decline occurs from this kind of damage. And so what I suggested, this bond, was really, it's an arrangement that is conditional and only needs to be paid on if the repair work or the replacement of the trees is necessary. So I'm not asking to have them put money up, right now, or to pay in advance or anything like that. And I'm just trying to find a way to cover off a risk that could well occur because of the sewer line. I'm not debating that we have a sewer line or that has to be put in that location. It's just, we have to deal with what we have to deal with, which are these trees that are in that area. A couple months ago, and before one of the other planning board meetings, I did send a picture of the view from the back.
We have an extensive agenda. If you could try to wrap it up, please.
Oh, you're so right. I'm sorry. Of course. I guess in conclusion, I will say that the grand scheme of this multi-million-dollar project, I think a $50,000 bond is a reasonable request. And the trees are of significant value to us and to any future owner in terms of view, shading, landscaping, et cetera. So I would ask, I did hear, by the way, by email at 5 o'clock today that they would consider a smaller bond, but I really felt 50,000 was a fair number, considering there could be 5 trees at risk. And I'm really just trying to cover off at worst case 2. And the last thing is I haven't had a chance to go through the sewer easement agreement. I just got it again at 5 today. But I will take a look at that. And I agree with Casey, and I thank her that they're suggesting that just be a condition to the permit being granted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to, don't go away. I think the drainage issue, we should thank the applicant for trying to take care of your drainage issue. It was not related to the proposal. It was unrelated to the proposal, but they did address the drainage issue. And I think your neighbors, Dr. and Dr. Castellano, should be thanked for their effort. As far as I know, it was unsolicited, and they addressed some of the drainage that might have been impacting your property. I've known them for a while. They're very nice people and they deserve a thank you. In terms of the easement, the board here, at least my opinion, is that the easement can be between the 2 neighbors. But the sewer easement is not really something that we're really concerned with, or at least I'm not, other than the fact you need a sewer to serve a house. And that could be arranged at a later date. And we could pass a resolution stating that there's no building permit until there's a sewer. In other words, the house can't be built or even start a construction until there's a solution to the sewer issue. And I think we're heading in that direction. In fact, I know we're heading in that direction. And I'd like to poll the board on that.
I was wondering if the Halletts wanted to, not the Halletts, sorry, if the Harris were intending to speak at all.
We'll get to that. I just want to see if this is a poll, not a vote.
Okay.
Are you okay with the direction we're heading?
Yes.
Yeah.
I am.
Mike?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, Ms. Halleck, you have anything to say about that?
No, that's very fair. And I agree. I did thank the the neighbors about the work on the water issue. And I agree that the Castellanos deserve thanks as well. So thank you. And I really appreciate all the help and the patience you've had over, for the last 6 months getting this done.
Okay. Oh, and I would like to address something Casey said. She mentioned that this has been before the board since April. Well, there was 2 different applications. There was a site capacity, which was different than the application we have now. And last meeting, the reason we're having this meeting, one of the reasons is that last meeting, you didn't cover any of the items in Hans' letter of the previous meeting. So some of this is some of the questions you never answered from previous meetings. All right, thank you. Sarah, anybody else in the public?
Nobody else is raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Is everybody okay if we go to a resolution now?
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Greg, you still on?
Yes, sir.
So Ms. Halleck had said that she thought that there were 5 trees that might be at risk by the placement of your proposed placement of the sewer easement. Do you agree with that? If not, why not?
Yes, I think that's an accurate statement. And we are just in terms of the actual construction of the sewer easement. Bartlett Tree Experts, who's certainly a reputable, certified arborist operation, in that letter had basically listed a few ways in which kind of best practices could be kind of best benefit the existing trees to remain, from things called like air spading and using of sort of construction panels that span the roots, fertilizing after the construction is done. So I know the Saharas are perfectly comfortable with performing best practices to minimize the impact on the trees. They're not just looking to go in there willy-nilly and do damage.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? No other questions. Nothing else from the public?
No.
Mary Ann, do you have a resolution?
Yeah, I did draft a resolution, and I should say it's, just to put it in context, that it leaves unsaid the stuff about tree, bonds for the trees or whatever, because that's really between the property owners. That's between the Hallecks and the Saharas. So anyway, I'll read the resolution I have. Whereas on April 6th, 2022, the planning board determined that Emily and Jamie Sahara's 2.03 acre lot on Field Terrace has a site capacity of 1. And whereas in June 2022, Jamie and Emily Sahara applied for site development plan approval to construct a new house, garage, pool, driveway, and other improvements on their lot on Field Terrace, which lies in the 1F40 zoning district. And whereas the original plans would have required several variances, but the plans were revised so as not to require any variances. And whereas the applicants have a 20-foot utility easement over the property to their south owned by Mark and Claire Halleck, but no written easement agreement appears to have been entered into. And whereas part of their application, applicants seek to install a 4-inch sewer lateral on the Halleck property in order to connect to an existing sanitary sewer line in Ardsley Avenue East. And whereas the applicants and Hallecks have entered into negotiations about the exact location and terms of an easement agreement. And whereas, well, the exact location of the easement in terms of an easement agreement. Whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans and a memorandum dated May 31st, September 6th, and September 30th, made a number of comments, most of which were addressed in subsequent submissions. And whereas Suzanne Nolan, the village landscape consultant, reviewed the plans and in memorandum dated June 1st, September 6th, and October 3rd, made a number of recommendations which were addressed in subsequent submissions. And whereas the planning board held a public hearing on the application on June 1st, September 7th, October 6th, and November 2nd. And whereas the action is a type 2 action under SECR and therefore requires no environmental review, now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval for the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled Sahara property prepared by ARP Engineering, and it lists those sheets. The drawings entitled Sahara Residence prepared by the Up Studio. And the landscape lighting and fencing plan submitted by Bayview Landscape Architecture, subject to one, complying with the items in Hans October 28th, 2022 memorandum. Two, submitting proof of a fully executed easement for the sewer line. And three, receiving approval from the village's landscape consultant for any trees planted in mitigation of tree removals.
I only got one copy. Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay, any questions on the resolution, board? No. Okay, do we have a vote? Lori?
Approved.
Dan?
Approved.
Caesar, approved? Mike? Approved. Kevin? Approved. Okay, thank you very much, and it's certainly a different looking house, would be in addition to the village on something that's very modern looking. Good luck with that, and I certainly hope the easement, it has to work out, otherwise there's no house. And I'm sure you're quite capable of the lawyers involved to get something done. Thank you very much. We'll move on.
Thank you very much, Caesar, and to the board, and thank you to Claire for her comments. We will certainly be in touch to continue discussing this. Have a great night, everyone.
She gave the wrong one.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the first one I sent you was my draft.
So,
Yeah, you would not, we'll give it back,
and that one.
give it back.
It's coming.
Yeah,
All of that.
Did that one.
okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're moving on. That was Field Terrace. Moving on to number 3, 2022-30. That would be 30-40 South Broadway.
If you're here to represent the application, if you could please hit the raise hand button.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, village council, staff. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, but you need to identify yourself.
Will do. Lino Sharetta, partner with the law firm Blakely Platt and Schmidt on behalf of SCF APEG Holdings LLC. Thank you for having us this evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. With me tonight is our project team. We have JMC. Also from JMC, we have Anthony Guccione, who will be presenting this evening. As you know, members of the board, we were here last month seeking a renewal of the approvals that were previously granted by this board for a 27-unit townhome residential development, which consists of 21 market rate and 6 affordable housing units. Since the last meeting, we did submit an updated plans and a letter. And my letter, which obviously you have, I won't read into the record, but really just address some of the site stabilization, erosion control, also immediate site stabilization, also stabilization for construction, about existing tree removal and construction sequencing. I know our project team did meet with the building department this week, and I know they're making some progress with respect to, I guess, that phasing and that sequencing of the units and construction. I know we did receive a memo from Han Engineering dated October 31st. And we did provide the village with a revised EAF, and hopefully the village attorney did receive that. There were just some corrections that had to be made to that form, which we did provide. So without further ado, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I just want to have Anthony Guccione from JMC just give an overview of what we submitted and then just a little discussion of where we are with respect to the project. Again, just by way of background, as the board knows, this project did receive approvals by this board back in November 2016. Those approvals did lapse. There was construction that was commenced, and now we're looking to pick that up and hopefully key this off so that we can get a renewal of those approvals. So Anthony, if you can just take us through the site plan and just a little bit of what we've done to date.
Sure. Thanks, Lino. Good evening. My name's Anthony Guccione. I'm with JMC. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so since our last meeting, we visited the site. We did determine the site was substantially stabilized with several deficiencies. After that, we submitted a plan to your board, which proposed some additional measures to further stabilize the site, which the applicant is intending to implement. If it's okay with the board, I could bring up a plan and just briefly go over those proposed
Sure.
improvements. So this is the sediment erosion control plan, and the stuff that was added, we kind of highlighted with these red clouds. So
It's not up
first
yet.
thing,
You
We
know,
don't see it.
you don't see it. Let me share. So many different platforms. Okay, there we go. How about that?
well, it's
It's
coming.
loading.
Okay.
Loading is a good thing.
Yeah.
There we go.
All right, go
Okay, you
ahead.
can see that now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so again, the site that I showed you at the last meeting, this is the erosion and sediment control plan, and to this, the things that were added new based on our site visit are clouded here in red. I'll just go over a few of these items. So you may have noted that here on the east side of the site, there was some sloughing. This pipe was installed several years ago, and as a result, there was some sloughing of the slope. So what we're proposing here, there's a note that says repair the slope, install seed mulch and slope stabilization fabric, and maintain until fully stabilized. And then we added a couple of additional rows of silt fence here to prevent any further erosion there in that location. We added a couple water bars here at the driveway. There's a series of catch basins here just at the top of the driveway, at the top of the hill. And what those water bars do, they create kind of a berm in the road where the water would be intercepted and directed into those catch basins. So it would no longer wash down the driveway, because the water coming from the site and coming down the driveway is what was causing that erosion and rilling that you might have seen in the driveway as it comes down this steeply sloped portion. So that was the water bar should really help with that, help redirect the water away from the driveway. The stabilized construction entrance you see here, that's that sort of stone symbol here. Typically, a stabilized construction entrance is 50 feet in length from here to here. What we proposed here is to regrade the driveway, add new stone, and then extend the stabilized construction entrance a total of 100 feet, so double the length of it, which will help stabilize that again and help with erosion of that driveway. We are proposing to these stormwater systems. So, you know, there's a sediment trap on the site here. I think I went over that last time. This is where the affordable units are going to go. What we're proposing is to leave that in place until the site, till construction resumes. And I'll go over the phasing in a minute that we've been speaking about with Mr. Marin, but this sediment basin here, sediment trap here will stay until the construction of these affordable units begins. At that time, we propose to put these stormwater systems online. They've got an upstream of those systems are hydrodynamic water quality structures. They filter out the sediment and any debris that comes before it gets into the system. And they're typically maintained 2 times a year. What we're proposing is to monitor and clean them as necessary, as much as a weekly, so that we make sure that this system stays clean. I know Mr. Hahn issued a memo we just got yesterday afternoon. He's not in favor of putting these online prior to complete stabilization of the site, but we'd like to discuss that with him because, as we mentioned, the site is quite stabilized and we think we can make that work. So we'd like to continue to work with Mr. Hahn and come up with a solution there on how that is implemented as we go forward. And then, yeah, that's it. That's both the systems and both the hydrodynamic structures. So that's really it for the immediate stabilization of the site. The second thing we got together with Mr. Marin this week, and we've been working on how we go through the remaining outstanding items on the project. And one of them is staging, and I'll go to the other plan and phasing of the project. What we discussed was constructing, basically finishing the northern end of the site. So as you know, these units here, 3 and 4, are up out of the ground. There's a foundation, framing, and roofing there. 5 and 6 have a foundation. So with that in mind, we're proposing to construct this northern portion of the site. So units 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 18, 19, 20, and 21 in phase 1, as well as the
Still in
affordable.
discussion with 7, 8, and 9. Yeah.
7, 8, and 9 are still in discussion, right?
Right.
And as well as the affordable units. 22, 23, 24, 25, and the 2 units in the McCon Stern House down at the bottom of the hill. By doing that, the north end of the site can be finished up, stabilized, paved, landscaped, and people could move in here. And this could be temporarily a 2-way road with a hammerhead here, so people could live here. This could be finalized. This would remain a construction area over here of the road, also 2-way until it's finalized and stabilized while these remaining 8 units get constructed in phase 2. So that's what we discussed with Mr. Marin. We'd like to just share that with the board and see if that was something that worked from the board's perspective.
Well, I'm concerned about the elimination of the sedimentation basin too soon. We want to see the affordable housing done before all the projects, before all the buildings are up.
Right.
But when you say stabilize, if you take that basin out too soon, meaning the roadway is not done, and the curbing is not done, so that the drainage that would go to the new systems, the permanent systems, don't get contaminated while you're trying to build a road. If you're building a road, to me, it would seem like you want the sedimentation basin because building a road would create quite a bit. If it got a heavy rain while the road is still disturbed, it may be an issue. So you're correct. You need to really work on your scheduling so that the sedimentation basin is not taken out too soon. We want it, it's going to be somewhere in the middle so you can build those affordable housing before you get to the end, before you get to build out of the others. Also, if I recall, there was some planting remediation on the hillside in the Broadway buffer where you put the pipeline in. You said you're reinforcing or rehabilitating the slope that got washed out a little bit. I don't know what you mean by you're working on it. I think there was a planting plan. If there isn't, you need to have one for the Broadway buffer and any damage that was done because of the installation of that pipe.
Yes, there is a plan for planting the Broadway buffer and enhancing that whole buffer. What was discussed was having that fully installed prior to the first certificate of occupancy for the first unit. But certainly in the area where it's disturbed, we could plant those shrubs earlier.
Yes, that's going to be part of when you switch out from the sedimentation building around the same time you're building the sedimentation basin. At the same time you're building the affordable housing. Before you do anything to the south, we'd like to see that stabilized before the end of construction. Sooner than better, sooner than later.
The slope, that is.
Yes.
Yeah, we'd like to get that going sooner, even, we've spoken with the applicant and Mr. Marin was willing to have that work, progress pretty quickly, like very soon.
Right.
We actually asked them to sit with Susan Nolan as soon as possible.
Okay.
To come up with a game plan so that you're satisfied with it when you're ready to approve this, instead of waiting until afterwards.
Yeah, because we don't want to wait to the end and then it doesn't happen. Then we get into a fight of a certificate of occupancy and fighting over a tree. It's easier to get that in soon, and it would enhance the hillside a lot sooner from the damage that was done previously.
Right. Yeah, we did regarding the trees.
You may not be the person to answer this, or maybe you didn't get to it in your presentation, but last meeting I asked for what the elevations of what the buildings look like. I was on the board when this was initially approved, and it was a big deal what the units look like from the back, meaning from on the north side. The face the roadway, but there's the back of the buildings. I certainly didn't want it to look like a barracks from the back. And there was quite a bit of effort to make the rear look architecturally pleasing and not just a brick wall or a white wall. And there was an effort by the previous people to do just that. And you didn't have it last time. I hope you have that this time.
Yeah, the intention is to keep the buildings the same as what was previously approved, all the sides of the building. The applicant is in the process right now of bringing the original architect back on board. So he can be here at an upcoming meeting to show you the buildings, but they're essentially what was approved by your board during the first go around.
Well, essentially,
that
I
before
hope
you.
that means the same as.
They are, yes.
You're working on I mean, did I cover everything that we needed on the timing, the
Yeah,
construction schedule?
we're gonna schedule another meeting for next week. Tuesdays doesn't work, Anthony, just so you know. I'm waiting for answers from them on how they think they want to proceed, and then we'll fine tune the sequence.
Doug, are we in the same page about when the sedimentation basement can be taken out? We're talking having the roadway or some fashion of the roadway and curbing, so you don't need the sedimentation basin. Am I correct?
We can come up with a plan.
Yeah, and I, like I said, my memo says that I currently don't agree with installing the connecting to the infiltration system before there's complete stabilization upstream.
The danger is in damaging.
Yeah, the
and
longevity.
Clogging the long-term stormwater system.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
certain you don't want to
difficult to
do
clean
that
out,
either,
so.
because then you have to replace them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even
No, we
cleaning
do
them
not
out,
want
I
to
mean,
do that.
once the fines are all clogged up,
They're gone.
there's no going back,
There's
so.
no going back.
Yeah. It
All
would.
right, I'm sorry. I think I cut into your presentation. Would you continue if there's more to continue with?
Sure, I was pretty much wrapping up. One thing I wanted to state was, it was asked at the last meeting if the trees were removed in accordance with the approved plan, and Lucille Munns was the village landscape architect at the time we were previously before your board. She happens to work for our office now, so she went out and checked that all over, compared to the plans, and they were removed in accordance with the approved plan, so that was done properly.
Could we
With
get a
that,
statement to that? Could we get something that
Yes.
a report that says that?
Absolutely. We put that in the letter, but we will certainly give you a report that clarifies that. No problem.
I want Susan to meet him out there, and then Doug should go over it
Yeah.
with her,
Okay, good.
get her up
That's fine.
up to speed.
Yeah.
And then we'll get a report from Susan before the next meeting.
Council, you know what we think of hearsay, right?
That we do, Caesar.
That's all really I had to present. I just was hopeful that the board would allow us to continue to work with the village's consultants to continue to advance this and address any outstanding items as we move forward.
Yeah, we had
Is
a
there
very,
anything else-
sorry,
Is there anything else you wanted to propose?
at this time, no, Mr. Chairman, what we'd like to do is again, continue our discussion with the building department, because again, we did make some progress, and obviously we'd like to, further like hash out the sequencing and the phasing of this. That's gonna be important, obviously, and obviously for your board. So, it was very helpful. So we'd like to continue that discussion with the village building inspector and have our engineering team, meet and have that. And so that by the next meeting, we can hopefully present that to your board. So you'll have a better idea of how we look to phase this project.
The way the driveway looks from Broadway, can an effort be made to put in what you propose as a construction access, the first 100 feet to do that, so that we can look at something that's different than what's there now?
Yes, we plan to get out there as soon as we can, just come to agreement with Ed, get the approval to do that and get a crew out there doing that work. So
They have a list of stuff they wanted to do, and I said, put it in writing, and we'll authorize as long as it's reasonable. Like we tie back in the building, protecting the building. So the silt fence that they propose, sediment growth, and we can add the road paving the first 100 feet with the base coat, we can add that.
Any questions from the board, Lori?
I have two questions. Can someone very quickly describe the materials that would be used for a water bar? I'm not so familiar with that term. Is it all
Sure.
natural materials?
yeah, so let me, we had a detail that showed that. Okay, so it's basically a berm. You take the material. So the catch basin would be upstream of that here. And what's happening is the catch basins that are installed are above the elevation of the road, because the road is at subgrade and the pavement hasn't been installed. So when you install several inches of pavement, that'll bring the pavement up to the elevation of the of the catch basin. Right now, the water can't get in because of that. So the idea would be do a little excavation in front of where the earthen berm is going to be. Then you build this up to the height of the curb. So when the water comes down the slope, it hits this little berm, and we could make it a little more gentle like this than this because it's in a road. The catch basin would be here. It would get blocked by this, and this top of berm would be at the same elevation as the curb. So the water gets detained there and gets directed into the catch basins. And then this would all just be stabilized with the stone like the rest of the site.
Okay, that's helpful.
Okay.
And then my other question is, Caesar, you mentioned certificate of occupancy, right? So how does certificate of occupancy work in a phased development? Right, because the idea, I think that the idea is that we want to ensure that the affordable units are built and, you know, so I'm just concerned that you get certificate of occupancy for 90% and there's less incentive.
Well, I think that's where the phasing comes in. And the initial phase probably will be less than 50% of the project. And so that they will have COs for way less than 50% of the project, probably what, 20% of the project?
Yeah, we're in discussions with a few extra units, but
How many we're talking?
so there's 11 in my list originally in my first discussion, 11 to finish.
11 Market.
11 more.
Yeah, market,
Yeah.
right.
So the total project is, I can't remember.
27.
27.
7
So
with
11.
6 affordable, is that right?
And that includes the affordable.
They have to do the affordables. The conversation was, we'll give them more than they originally had if they complete the affordables before they start the last 11.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the discussion we're in now.
Yeah.
Trying to get everything everybody wants.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Just a quick question in reference to the berm. How large is the berm in front of the curb?
It would be about 6 inches high. It would be, so it's at subgrade elevation now, so it would be about 6 to 12 inches high, so it matched the top of the curb, top elevation of the curb. All right, so the water wouldn't be able to go over it before it got into the catch basin.
I got you. Okay.
Yep.
No further questions. Thank you.
Mike?
No further questions.
Kevin?
No question.
Before I go to the public, you got any questions of us? Any further questions?
We're good.
No.
Sarah, any public?
No, nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay. I think we're done. You got your homework?
No, Caesar, we were gonna go through the EAF.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's why we have the village attorney here to remind me of what we're supposed to do.
So, what's on your desk is the EAF. The part, the applicant prepares the part 1 of the EAF. I went through that and it's all accurate. It was included in the packet. The part 2 is what this board does. This board goes through and identifies what it thinks the impacts could be. And what's on your desk is the EAF part 2 from the original SECRA neg deck. So you might, I guess we should go through it and see whether you think any of the answers should change. Because it has been, I guess, about 5.5 years since that last approval. So,
Yes.
okay. Will there be any impact on land? And yes,
Let me,
okay.
let me emphasize the part you said. Has anything happened since the first approval that would change any of these answers? Okay.
So impact on land is the same impact on land. Unless anybody disagrees, we'll go on to that impact on geological features. That would be the same as last time, I think. Will there be impacts on surface water? Yes, but they were all found last time to be no or a small impact. Anybody have any reason to think that should be changed?
Rather than ask that, you want to ask that question every time, any reason?
Well, I don't want to assume it's not, okay.
Well, Mary Ann, let me ask you, just going back to page 1 and looking at 1E. How can the answer to that be no?
No,
The
it's
proposed
not,
action.
no, it isn't just no, it's no, or it's a small impact, no,
Well,
or
the
small.
proposed action may involve construction that continues for more than 1 year or in multiple phases. It will either be continuing for more than a year or in multiple phases.
Yeah.
Yeah, but do you believe that that would be a moderate or significant impact?
On what?
See, the answer isn't just no, it's no or a small impact may occur.
But impact on what?
They have land and
On any of the other
Impact- This is
questions,
the impact on the land, I mean,
there's no significant impact.
No. I don't think so. No,
I don't think the fact that it extends more than a year changes anything. If we do all the
Well, let me-
sedimentation basins and the timing of everything is.
Well, let me put it the other way. When the planning board approved this in 2016, I have to assume that they thought the project was going to take more than 1 year to build,
Yes,
right?
yes,
And yet they adopted the answer. I'm just wanting to make sure of
Yeah.
that,
that's correct.
right? Okay.
I lost track of where we are.
Okay, whether there's any difference in impacts on surface water.
Groundwater, number 4. right?
Well, we 3 and then 4, whether there's an impact on groundwater, whether there's any different impact on flooding. Now, actually, Doug, wasn't
Yes. but then there's-
there some work done down there more recently in that area? Bonnie Brook and stuff, would that,
Oh, it wouldn't change.
it's not gonna change
No.
anything, okay?
But it's number 5 you're talking about,
Yeah,
but there's a check mark in yes.
yeah, yes, but then it's all no or small.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's small. So if it's small or small, then you can still make
Okay.
that. Yeah, I know, it's a really confusing form. Impacts on air, you know, and the impacts on air are not kind of things, okay. Impacts on plants and animals.
The impacts on, it's not checked off. Under number 6, there are no check marks.
Yeah, because the answer on the top is
Oh,
no.
no, so, okay.
Okay, impacts on plants and animals.
Mhm.
Always small impacts. Impacts on agricultural resources, that's irrelevant. Impact on aesthetic resources. The answer was no. The project hasn't changed, so. Impact on historic and archaeological resources. It said yes, because,
The mile marker for is the
right, and it's also contiguous to the,
aqueduct.
aqueduct, but there wouldn't be any large impacts from that. Impact on open space and recreation.
Hold a second, I think C should be checked too. I mean, the is within or substantially contiguous to it.
An
The Albany Post Road
archaeological
mile,
site.
well, isn't the Albany Post Road marker?
You know, but it says that's what B is.
Okay,
B covers that.
all right.
All right, the impact on open space and recreation will result in a loss of recreational opportunities. No. Impact on critical environmental areas. No, there is a CEA there because it's the Hudson River, but this wouldn't have any impact on the Hudson River. Impact on transportation, the proposed action may result in a change to existing transportation systems. Now, Mike, you had asked a question in our meeting the other day, does the fact that there could be development, more multifamily development, up on Broadway? Well, 2 things. Number 1, you take into account what's an actual, projects, likely project, which there isn't at the moment. But the other thing is, I looked at the old, traffic study and it included 150 units from that space because they thought it was going to be, they thought it was going to be, there was a proposal for the Brightview for the assisted living. So they took that into account with their traffic counts, 150 units. So whatever's there would make up for that. Okay, impact on energy, well, there will be more energy, but the small increase from residential use.
Well, can I just go
yeah.
back then? If you're saying yes, but small, I don't understand why impact on transportation wouldn't be yes, but then it would be no or small.
Well,
impact.
because if you read the things underneath,
Yeah,
projected traffic increase may exceed the capacity of the existing road network.
well, then you would
It
say
can
no,
result-
or small impact. may-
Yeah, but if it said, you usually only answer those questions if you answer yes on top. And I think you would have to answer no to all of those. That it won't result in the construction of paved parking area for 500 more vehicles,
that it
will
won't,
degrade
yeah.
existing transit access, will degrade existing pedestrian or bicycle
No,
accommodations.
it's more just A.
Well, whether it can exceed the capacity of the existing road network, not will there be more, will it
Okay.
exceed the capacity?
Okay.
I think the
Got it.
critical part here is that when this was looked at, the Brightview was taken into consideration.
More.
And
Yeah.
that is,
And there was a full traffic study done at one time.
Okay.
Yeah. They did a traffic study and then we had our traffic consultant review
Do
it.
it too. Impact on.
Noise, odor and light, that wouldn't change. Impact on-
hold on a second, on, the applicant is still here. When this was first approved, dark sky didn't exist.
Yeah.
So you need to take into consideration any lighting that was previously approved. Needs, if it's not dark sky, it needs to be changed to dark sky.
Understood.
I don't think it changes the answer on here, but I
No,
just happen to
yeah,
think,
it wouldn't change the answer on the, on part two, but.
no, but it would.
We already said that.
It would change, might change some of your design for lighting.
All right, and then the impact on human health. That wouldn't be any different. Consistency with community plans. There's been no change there. Consistency with community character, I don't believe there's been a change there. So if that's the case, then as part of the resolution, when we get to it, I guess we can again, make a declaration. We don't do it tonight.
No. Because they're gonna come back with stuff that.
Right, and it'll be all part of the resolution. It's just if we had identified things that we needed them to study, we should have done it tonight.
Correct. Okay, any questions as a result of us going through this? Mr. Leno?
All good, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody on the board have any further questions on what we just went through or anything else?
Nope.
Dan?
No further questions. Nothing further.
Kevin?
No, thank you.
You have anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your presentation and I hope you can reach an agreement that we all can live with in terms of preventing erosion coming down to Broadway and repairing the Broadway buffer after that pipe was put in.
We will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you.
The sequence
Thank you.
is going to be, so please work on it.
We will. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is number 2022-10 is the Siemens Industry, sometimes called Columbia University Nevis Project, 136 South Broadway. When they're coming online, I went over the history of why it's Nevis, because it was owned by Alexander Hamilton's son, and his father, Alexander Hamilton, was born on the island of Nevis in the Caribbean. Now, Columbia University claims that Alexander Hamilton graduated from the predecessor of the Columbia University, but he did go to school there, but he never graduated. Something called the War for Independence interrupted that. So
Thank you for that history lesson.
well, I can go on. Alexander Hamilton obviously went on went on to serve admirably as an aide to General Washington and served admirably as a combat commander at the Battle of Yorktown.
We're ready.
You ready?
Yep,
You're on mute.
You're on mute. Unless I'll.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can. Thank you.
I also will be, I'm here tonight. My name is Leslie Snyder. I'm a partner in the law firm of Snyder and Snyder. And I'm here tonight on behalf of Siemens and Columbia in connection with their proposal to install solar energy equipment at the Columbia University campus at 136 South Broadway. I'm here tonight along with Luke Greco of Tectonic Engineering, who will present in a few minutes the plans for the solar energy equipment at the campus. In furtherance of sustainability, Columbia University and Siemens have been working together to create renewable energy with solar energy equipment and to reduce the university's amount of fossil fuel use. We last appeared before this board at your April 6, 2022 meeting. Back in April, the applicant had proposed only ground-mounted solar energy equipment, which was placed largely in a cleared field near Ardsley Avenue West. In response to that proposal, the board requested that the applicant consider alternative locations to the site, including rooftop solar energy equipment. Over the last several months, Siemens and Columbia have spent considerable time in coming up with a revised plan, which would meet the goals of the board to provide both rooftop solar equipment and also to place the equipment away from the Ardsley Avenue West. We now have a revised plan which shows rooftop solar equipment on the existing maintenance building with ground-mounted solar equipment proximate thereto. All of the equipment is in the maintenance area of the Columbia campus on the northeast corner of the property away from Ardsley Avenue West. There is mature vegetation on the property which will shield it from view. The solar energy equipment is also set back from Broadway so that it will be screened from view as well from Broadway by fencing and vegetation. In considering the revised plans, the planning board should note that the application is consistent with the village's policy in connection with fostering solar energy. The village policy expressly states that it is in the public interest to provide for and encourage renewable energy systems, such as the one that we proposed, and to provide a sustainable quality of life. The new proposed plan shows that our solar energy equipment is in compliance with the village code. The equipment is unmanned, so it will cause no increase in traffic, no additional increase in usage of the site. Also, an important feature of the site is that the project will in essence be a living lab for the community. This is a STEM and climate change education component, which will be open to the community in order to provide education about climate change. The applicant envisions the project being a living lab. It will allow local students and the community as a whole to explore renewable energy and understand climate change. You will note at the April meeting, there were several residents who spoke of the important value of the project. And we are pleased that we have now been able to provide a new project design, which incorporates both rooftop and ground-mounted solar in the maintenance area of the Columbia campus. At this time, I would ask Luke Greco of Tectonic Engineering to share his screen and review the plans if the board would like us to do so.
Yes, we would like that. And I would like to say before that goes, is that obviously this plan is different and you accomplished some of the alternatives. And the difference that we received dozens of letters and emails on the first proposal, and we have two this time, one from Charles Kerr and from Marianne Osmond. Did you get copies of that, by the way?
I did. I just got one today. Thank you.
Okay, so consider that in the, when you go into the, after the presentation, I'll go through some details and consider the letters as part of our your need at the next meeting.
Sure.
Go ahead.
All right, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Louis Greco with Tectonic Engineering. As Leslie introduced the project, we've we've added a rooftop solar component where we've maximized the rooftop coverage while maintaining a 10-foot minimum setback. It is a low profile installation, meaning it's roughly a foot off of the rooftop surface. So unlikely to be visible from grade just due to its low profile, the setback from the edges, and the height of the building. That adding that component has then essentially cut the system size of the ground mounted solar in half. So now we've got, well, I'll consider the northwest array.
Excuse me,
which
was it
wraps-
cut in half because, excuse me, was it cut in half because the rooftop is more efficient?
Just by
Or you just
moving,
decided to cut it?
just moving panels from what was ground onto the rooftop. Just moving it from one position to another.
All right, so you made it a little smaller. Is less
That-
capacity.
Not speaking in terms of capacity, just the number of panels that's on the ground versus how much is on, which was previously on the ground and what is now on the rooftop.
In other words, if you didn't have the rooftop, would the number of square feet that's on the rooftop would be a lot more on the ground is where I'm going.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
So the northwestern array, which is the one that basically follows around the perimeter of the community garden, spans approximately 170 feet wide by 450 feet long. It does not alter anything within the community garden. You'd still have access from the east. It is, in doing so, it was previously noted that we would be protecting this large tree. So that continues to be the case. And as I said, no array to the east side. Now we've got the southeastern array, which previously everything was in the southern portion of the property. As you can see now, it's all tucked, as Leslie stated, up in the maintenance area of the campus. So the southeastern array is approximately 190 feet wide by 290 feet long. Again, previously it was down here in more of a line of sight, so to speak, and now these are tucked in the center of the campus, in the center of the maintenance area, with a nice buffer around all cardinal points. Fencing for the arrays would continue to be as they were previously proposed. The fencing around the community garden would be approximately 4 feet off of the existing fence. So the fence for the garden would be maintained. The security fence around the array would stand just as the security buffer, but the separation would allow for maintenance in between. And then there would be a 15-foot separation from the security fence to the actual panels themselves. So I'm going to switch over to our site, the pre-construction tree line, what you currently see out there today, and just giving you a sense of the amount of tree coverage that's on site versus afterwards with the approximate removal. And I say approximate because we're saying that there's approximately 119 trees that would be removed. We would obviously work with the village consultant landscape architect to identify which trees needed to be removed, how many, and so forth. But rather than focusing on a number, I really just want to highlight in context how little of a difference there is along the perimeter or the buffers to the property lines. So in doing so, what we've done is we've minimized how much can be seen, or what we think to be seen, and what we'd like to do is propose or present to you a proposed photo sim location site map, which takes into consideration your consultant landscape architect and the considerations of viewpoints and so forth. And so we're not proposing, or we're not presenting to you a photo simulation at this time. Rather, what we're showing to you is what we propose or would like to do as the VIA and vantage points and sight lines to kind of get your weigh in, comments and so forth on the locations. She did identify one critical location along the aqueduct. So we've included that, as well as along from West Clinton and from Broadway. So I'll flip back over to the plans. And lastly, we do accommodate fire access by widening the existing road. You'll potentially remember we were looking to widen the lower road when the array was down here. Now that basically would happen at the northern portion in the maintenance area. It would still be a grass surface, so that it just doesn't change the aesthetics, but it would be able to withstand the additional weight from a fire apparatus. And there would be a turnaround to be 100% compliant with New York State Fire Code. So pending any questions.
Hey, thank you very much. Columbia has always been a good neighbor of Irvington, so and I'm glad they continue to be so by adjusting what was obviously less than desirable the first go around. I've been out and I walked the site Sunday, yesterday, and today, and I saw the flags that you put up, and you're on the right track. And the devil's always in the details. So rather than, I can just tell you that this is much more suitable, and you're on the right track. And pending the details, it would seem like after we hear the details, we'll probably go forward. But I don't want to say that it ironclad. Yeah, it's great. Some detail may change what you just presented. Obviously, I would like to see the array in the northwest. The two fields to the northwest are at a considerably higher elevation than the aqueduct. And to make that demonstration, if you can make a horizontal profile so that everybody can see I can tell from the contours, but it would be easier to see if there's a horizontal cut of the elevations from the aqueduct to the panels. I don't think you would be able to see anything from the aqueduct because of that elevation. But you might see I don't know how you can have an 8-foot fence.
7-foot fence. And the
7
array
foot.
itself, the panels are just over 6 feet.
6 feet, 1.5 inches.
Correct.
And you might be able to see the fence from the aqueduct. So some screening in that direction would be desirable. And certainly anybody who is driving by, who's listening, if you ever notice the two little bird houses in that field, there's a red flag to the south of those bird houses. So the southeast array is further south than the two little bird houses that are in that field. So obviously there should be some screening in that direction, and you had that sight line identified. It may be more beneficial to do the screening parallel to the Broadway buffer as opposed to lining up some trees to the south side of the array. You might want to go north-south with it so that if you ever want to go further south, you already have the screening there. But that's up to you and the landscape architect. I have several other questions. Oh, and what we would like to do, because we're interested that the screening actually gets done, is should we ever get to a resolution, will require the screening to be in place before the project starts. And the other area of screening that, and I couldn't tell because obviously this in the north panel, there's all vegetation there, so it's hard to tell how I know it's 100 and something feet from West Clinton, but it's hard to tell whether screening will be up there. Let's assume you need screening and we'll work from there. And also that's in that corner. You're gonna be taking a lot of trees down, and as you said, our landscape architect needs to know, have an arborist report of the species and size of what's going out and species and size of what's going back in to replace them. And of course, the replacement trees can be integrated into the screening operation, so that you can accomplish two goals: one, to replacement that's going to be needed, as well as the screening. All right, let me go through a little list. Oh, you need to, we mentioned the Taconic region, the New York State Parks. You should get some comment from them, because that's their aqueduct. It's a state park.
Yes, we will.
And there's an issue, might be an issue with the code. How much power is going to be generated for use actually on site? And is there any power that's being generated that could be used as a credit to some other site, for like the 125th Street campus or the main campus? I don't know that answer, and that would be nice to know. And we went over some of these points the last meeting. Is there a takedown provision that someday in the future, is there a plan that if they needed to be taken down, they become obsolete? This current technology gets obsolete and there's a new technology and you have to take down what's there. The limits of construction, is that more than an acre? You'll need a speedies and a SWIP. You're going to be more than an acre, correct?
Yes.
Okay, for those who don't know what a SWIP is, a stormwater pollution prevention plan. You're in the View Preservation District. I don't think it's a problem, but you need to address it in your presentation. We mentioned, if you were listening, we have dark sky legislation. If you have security lighting, you got security fencing, you may have security lighting. Obviously, we don't want to see a Yankee Stadium sitting in the middle of your property. Be conscious of the dark sky compliance. I was out there and there's concrete construction debris up in the north corner by near the
Warehouse.
near the what?
Warehouse.
Near the warehouse. I would hope that's temporary.
Yeah, that
And,
again, this is their maintenance area, but yes, that is, I believe that is temporary and that's sort of their maintenance. You know, we're
right.
basically tucked into their maintenance area. So this is what they
Okay.
use to maintain the site.
Well, it was a lot of concrete. In terms of debris, I'd like to know when you take all those trees down, where they're going. The last time there was for whatever reason, not too long ago, there was an effort, there had to be a tree program of some sort. And a lot of tree trunks and branches were dumped in view of West Clinton. I would hope that doesn't happen again. You need to have a plan. What are you going to do with the tree trunks so that doesn't happen again? And as long as you're up in that north area, you may want to look at removing that dump site of old trees. What's under the panels? What's going to grow or not grow under the panels, and how will it be maintained? You can answer that question if you know now, but we certainly need an answer later.
Understood. Whatever it ends up becoming, obviously we would work with the landscape architect, but the idea would be a low maintenance growth, something underneath that is more of a periodic, needing periodic maintenance and mowing. But we'd be happy to discuss with the landscape architect what they may see as most beneficial for the site.
And I think I saw on the plans auxiliary structure, or I mean, the solar is produced DC and you got to convert it to AC. Is that what that, just to the north side of the southeast array, is that what that does? Is there going to be any auxiliary buildings or other pads that are going to?
There will be equipment. There will be ancillary equipment, switchboards and a disconnect switch and transformer. That's located in the heart of this. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is that the sole location of that kind of equipment?
For the ground mounted, yes. For the roof mounted, it will be inside the maintenance building.
Right, and this is going to be interconnected with the grid, so you don't need batteries to be stored
Correct.
someplace?
Correct. The proposed interconnect is right here at the entrance to the campus.
Okay, and you know the standard requirements for erosion control and grading changes.
Yes, sir.
And I think, Ed, did you mention you need a front yard variance?
No,
No, then I don't know why I wrote that.
we did look at it extensively. That's
Okay.
why.
Okay, based on what I said before I go to the board, any questions?
No, we recognize that we have to provide these additional details. And so we appreciate your highlighting them.
Yeah, like I said, I appreciate you not, it's quite an extensive list of details, and there may be more yet to come from the board and public. And I can appreciate you not wanting to get into all those details if you're not if you're not starting from the, if we can get past the location of everything, and I think we're getting past the location. I'm fairly happy with it, but again, can't say that I'm perfectly happy until we finish the details. All right, anybody from the board here? Lori?
I'm probably not as happy as Caesar is about the location. I really would have preferred that you stay away from that area and use parking lots and other buildings and surfaces that aren't natural. I recognize.
Excuse me, Lori, when you said stay away from that area, could you be more specific?
Between Broadway and the aqueduct.
Oh.
I recognize that the limitation is that you want to tie into the power grid on Broadway. So the further away you go from it, the harder and more expensive that is. I'm assuming that's what the situation is. But I do appreciate putting some on the rooftops of the maintenance building and breaking up the grid. I think that makes it a bit more pleasing. I thought that Chet Care's letter had some very interesting things that should be looked at. And then I'm just going to go back to the statement about Columbia offering STEM opportunities to students in this area. Columbia has been in this area since I've lived here. I have 3 kids who went through the middle school and high school, and I've never seen or heard any opportunities at the local Columbia campus. If there is not an expert on site at where these panels are, I'm not really sure how you can propose that this will become a learning lab for our students.
Thank you. That's a good point. The learning part is a good point. I agree.
Yeah,
with that.
I think the learning lab, we will provide, once it's developed, then I would imagine the school will have some kind of outreach with the school. And then I would assume that either their science teachers will come to say, there's one thing to learn in a book, renewable energy, and to see it in pictures, but there's another thing to see it, in the visual presence. So I think that will be a wonderful opportunity for, for the children to be able to see what does it mean rather than just seeing it in a book. It'll be able to, people talk about renewable energy. This will be, a project that you can be proud of and that will show renewable energy.
So in response, I will just say that we have a thriving science research program, and Columbia likely has opportunities that they could offer to the students now. And I would, again, which I did at the last meeting where you presented, recommend that that the next time you come to us, you bring a representative from Columbia who can begin speaking to our school system about that.
Yeah, we probably should have Columbia come in with a letter of what they intend to do as opposed to what you may think Columbia is going to do, Leslie. Okay, Dan, anything further?
No, thank you.
Dan?
Certainly it's an improvement from the prior presentation. So again, like Caesar said, we'll have to see what details come forth. And we have to obviously review it diligently.
Michael?
So back in April, we made a big point of wanting to know how much power your proposed panels were going to generate and whether they were all going to be used on site or whether that power was going to be used elsewhere. And so my question to you is all the power that's being generated by these solar panels going to be used on site?
Your code says it has to be used exclusively by the owner of the premises. So the power that's
And-
being generated here is being used exclusively by Columbia. That's what your
I
code
understand that.
requires.
And that doesn't answer my question because you made the same point last April. That owner also Columbia has other locations. So my question is all the power being generated here going to be used on this site?
I'll further qualify it. In my presentation, not necessarily used at 125th Street or the main campus, but those locations getting credit for what's being generated.
Again, all of the solar energy equipment will be used exclusively for Columbia. How exactly it's going to, this is for Columbia's use. It's not for anybody else's use. That's what you're, that's in conformance with your code. How is that? That's what your code requires, and that's what we're doing.
So Leslie, I'm going to ask a third time, and I'm assuming that if you don't answer, it's because you don't want, the answer to that is going to be that it's going to be used at other Columbia locations. So if there's I think you said there's a Columbia location in Rockland, for example. Or take 125th Street.
It's all going to be used for the benefit of Columbia. It's all going to be used for the benefit of Columbia.
So I'm going to take the adverse inference, Leslie, and you know what that means. I'm going to take the adverse inference that the power being generated here is not all being used on site. Okay? And you can always correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I'm going to operate. And so the size of this proposal is not limited to what the owner needs on this site. And the way I read the code is, and the purpose of the code was that for owners to be able to generate solar energy for use on their sites. And I believe that at least for residential use, I think that Con Ed actually limits the amount of power you can generate from solar panels, so that they look back 3 to 4 years and they see what your power usage is, because they don't want you to greatly exceed the power that you generally use. So I look at this and I see a larger than necessary proposal. And so my next question is, have you reduced the number of solar panels from the last proposal?
Yes, so we reduced the ground mounted by, I believe, more than a half of the ground mounted one. And we have just, our rooftop is not that, our whole installation is substantially less. Our rooftop is not that large as well. So it's been drastically reduced. I don't agree with you what your code says. In fact, I think your code is very clear that it has to be used exclusively by the entity. In this case, the entity is Columbia, but this has been drastically reduced. We're in a maintenance area. So if you really, the village has a policy to try to foster renewable energy, and we're not creating, we're not building structures or creating impervious surfaces. We're utilizing the existing maintenance building and the existing maintenance area. We're not taking away the community garden that will be able to be utilized in its full, as it's used today. The driveway to the community garden is going to remain the same. People can access the community garden. And the real area of that Columbia, utilizes was the open field that we previously had it installed. That's where I see a lot. I've been to the site now numerous times where the residents are, no one comes really over to this maintenance area. So this is, in my opinion, a great use of a maintenance area, utility area of the campus, not the area where people utilize. And now we really are fostering renewable energy for a good use, for a university that provides a wonderful purpose and is really seeking to reduce its, fossil use. So this is, all of the all of the legislation, all of the impetus of New York State is to seek ways to reduce renewable energy.
So
And
I
to
know
reduce-
that for I know that for myself, I would like to see at the next meeting, what your estimate is of the power that will be generated by this proposal and what your estimate is of the power that's used on site. Then I'll move on to my next question. You mentioned that there was a cutting down of over 100 trees. I forget what the number was.
119.
119 trees. Is the cutting down of those trees to create the space to put the panels? Because it's not, I believe that we need to have a site visit at an appropriate time so that we in the public can actually see where you're proposing to put these. But I wanted to know whether you're cutting down the trees in order to install these on the ground.
On the north side, yes.
The area, largely where it is, it's cleared. There are some areas, there's some scrub and there's some trees. We need to provide that will be our next step. Once the board, indicates that they like this location, then we will actually specify and get into the details and work with your arborist. But they're essentially interior trees. They're not the trees that shield it from Broadway. They're not the trees that shield it from the aqueduct. They're interior trees, interior to the Columbia campus, which is.
Let me ask it this way. What's the purpose of removing the 109 trees?
Well, Lou can show you on that drawing because he'll show you that it's all interior. Lou, maybe show that drawing so he can get an idea again of the before, what it looks like now, and then what we need to take out. But again, it's all interior. It's not your buffer areas.
Everyone see that?
So it's
Yeah.
so you're removing all the trees on the northern site in order to install those panels. And that's where the 109 basically are?
Actually,
There are a few down in this area, but the bulk of it is up in this area. And that's just that's a result of saving the location of the community garden and pushing it north to save the garden. And essentially we're swapping out the clearing of trees, as Leslie said, interior to the site, so there's no impact from the sight lines out on West Clinton and Broadway.
So we're cutting down trees in order to install the solar panels.
Leslie,
Okay,
Leslie, let me ask this. In order to put the tree cutting down in perspective, of the 119, how many are 8-inch trees which are regulated by the village?
that's what I think we need to get you that. I don't want to tell you a number and that being incorrect. So we need to
Well,
give you
if
that
19 are
detail.
regulated and 100 you can cut down without telling us. That may be a different concern. That would be helpful information. Well, that's part of the arborist report in terms of size and species. Any species is important because some species are more important than other species. And the size is certainly important because there's village regulated trees and non-regulated. And that kind of information would be helpful in terms of evaluating the extent of tree removal.
Right. I think it would be helpful for us to coordinate with your village arborist so that we can do it in a manner that has the least impact, and whatever, replacement we'll have to, we understand that we're going to have to replace trees, et cetera, accordingly.
Right. All I'm saying is if it's 119 regulated trees, that's a different point of view than 10 regulated trees in terms of the board evaluating that area in the north, that there's going to be a lot of clearing of trees.
I have nothing further.
Kevin?
I have a quick question. I don't know if you asked this in the details you requested. The fencing, the security fencing, just, I guess, some visuals on that or what the design will entail?
Sure. We
To
will
add to
provide
that.
that. If you have any preference of, type of fencing you would, look to us to have, typically I assume it's going to be chain link fence because we're going to have trees all around it. But if there's some kind of preference that you have, please let us know.
Anybody?
Caesar on.
Go ahead, Mary Ann.
Yeah, I have one question and one comment. I went out to see the area. Now, the stakes that are there, are the stakes as high as the ground mounted panels are gonna be?
Yes, they're 6-foot stakes.
Those,
Tall.
okay, and then the other thing, this is a comment, is when you make your submission for the next meeting, look, the Han memo has a lot of stuff in it, but doesn't have everything. It doesn't have all the points that the board made, and it's important when you respond to respond not only to the Han's memo, but also to the comments that the planning board made. Because it's a common mistake that applicants make.
We will do that.
I'm not
Thank
saying
you.
did, but
Getting back to the fence, is the fence a security fence or to keep people out, or is it a deer fence to keep deer out, or both?
It's a security fence. It meets the National Electric Code for securing solar.
Okay.
It's required, Caesar.
Well, I'm not in favor of chain link. It's the kind of fence that's less visible. And if it's properly, there's, shrubs around it, you can soften the look of it. Okay. And by code, it has to be a certain level of substantial fence to protect the, as you said, so. Okay. You need to make that presentation when you propose the fence as to why, security wise and whatever code it needs to be to satisfy whatever state department there is that regulates that.
We'll cite
Understood.
to the code section and show a detail as requested.
Anything else from the board?
No.
Just, how many employees actually work on site currently at this point in time?
At Columbia's, how many I will have to ask Columbia. I don't know. It's mostly used for research. So I gather, people do their research, they're not there at all times.
Right. Okay.
There's also classrooms in there.
Do you currently have classrooms in session there or no? It's mainly research, no?
They have a lecture hall they use.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Now, you're going to integrate it with the current grid. There's not going to be any need. Is there going to be any need to get by or through the aqueduct, or everything is on the east side of the aqueduct?
Correct. We're not going to be going through the aqueduct at all. That's why we placed it into this maintenance area, into that corner.
Okay. I think you should make that as a point.
Thank you.
Oh, on West Clinton, there's, I don't know if you're aware of it, but the engineer should be. There's a stone wall that comes down from Broadway heading west, and then it ends, and then there's a chain link fence. I can't tell. I would guess that north field is to the west of the end of that stone fence, but be nice to know where the end of the stone fence is, because the stone wall, I should say, because you can't see anything into the property because of the stone wall. So if the stone wall extends beyond, which I don't think it does, beyond the array, then there's not going to be any visual, because that stone wall would be the obstruction, the view obstruction. So on the
Yeah, we're not
plans,
touching. We're not touching that stone wall.
Yeah, I know, but I just want to know where it ends so I can tell if the northern array is to the west of the end of the stone wall, then you're going to need more screening, because if the stone wall extends beyond the north field, the stone wall is the screening. So So I know you're not gonna touch it, but it'd be nice to know where it is and where it ends.
Okay.
Sarah, anything from the public?
Yes, there's 3 people raising their hand to speak. The
Oh,
first-
before you do it, anybody in person have a comment on this project? Yes.
I'm, my name is Marianne Osmond.
Start when you're at the mic.
Okay. My name is Marianne Osmond. I live on Main Street and I have a plot in the community garden. I wrote a letter.
Yes, I made
A little bit later, I don't know if you had time to really look at it, and you've raised many of the questions that the letter raised. But one thing I missed, I think, was any mention of just how close the western array, especially the western array, would be to the community garden itself. Is it going to be right up against it, or will there be access, pedestrian access around the garden, to the east of that particular set of panels? The reason I ask is that there are people with plots that need to get on that western flank of the garden. It's just a question. I don't know if you've gotten that far in your planning. The other question, and I think you might have just mentioned, and I might have missed it, is a lot of people access that field, including the garden, but not just gardeners, access that field and to Broadway by way of the aqueduct. I gather from your plans that would no longer be true. Is that true?
I think they go to
So-
the office. Well, you're gonna have to walk around the array to get to there's gonna be fencing around the panels. So you can still come in, I would guess you could still come in from the aqueduct, but you have to walk around the panels.
Okay, okay, I just wanted to be clear about that. And the proximity of that lower array on the west to the garden would be interesting to know just how close it will be.
So the perimeter fence around the garden would be 4 feet to allow for maintenance, but of both fences, frankly. And then from that interior fence, the security fence for the array itself would be an additional 15 feet. So in total, the panels would be 19 feet from the community gardens fence.
Oh, okay, all right,
I
thank
think
you.
she was interested in the 4 feet between the garden fence and the panel fence. And that, I think you said 4 feet between the two fences.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, and you had a question about heat.
Yeah, but I mean, I understand that a lot of this is very provisional at this point. But yeah, the other question I had in my letter was to what extent these panels will generate heat, to the in the environment.
Ambient air.
And, as well as the glare. And I also should mention, and there's a lot talking about trees, so I think I know the answer to this, at least where it's leading, is to what extent there will be any shading created by the panels themselves. I mean, this is a garden that is obviously affected by growing conditions. The sun operates opposite to where the panels are. So in a way, that should not change. It shouldn't change at all. But I'm curious about whatever shadow the panels might throw, the heat they may generate. I don't know anything about solar energy, so bear with me.
It
These are just
won't take.
questions.
Yeah, the panels won't affect the ambient temperature in the garden, so it won't affect it. There won't be any glare. I think that was one of your concerns.
There was no glare.
Keep
Okay.
in mind, the panels.
It's a little hard to hear you, so I
No, I know.
apologize.
I'm sorry?
It's a little hard to hear you for some reason, but I believe you were asking about the heat and if there would be any glare.
Yes, I was. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about the garden, actually? The garden is directly in the ground, right? There aren't any like raised beds or anything like that.
Each plot,
I'll fill my actually get for the transcriber.
each plot is different depending on the person who's tilling that plot. Some have raised beds, some do not. Mine does, just to keep away from critters.
Yeah.
Um,
The reason I'm asking is because they are purposely separating the arrays because the garden is there. And I was just wondering if there was an opportunity to put the garden in a different space so that the arrays are more compacted together. And then but if it's affecting the garden and the people that use it, then I wouldn't want to propose that. I would only propose it if it was beneficial to the people who use the garden.
Okay, thank you for your input.
Sure.
And I did read the letter.
Oh, you talk, thank you.
All right, now you said you had 3 in the public on Zoom.
Yes, there's 3 people
Take them one
raising.
at a time.
Yes. The first person that is going to speak is Chris Lando.
Hi, everyone. Am I on here?
Yes.
So there was a comment made at the beginning about the low number of letters written this time around versus in April. I don't think that should be taken to express a disinterest or a tacit approval of this project. In April, I wrote a detailed 5-page letter with my wife, questioning a number of things that have been re-raised at this meeting. I think I won't go into all of them, but I think the most important question that has not been satisfactorily answered, and in fact has been continuously avoided, is what is the quantum of electricity generated? And beyond that, what is the commercial relationship between the applicant, Columbia, and Siemens, the installer? From what I and my wife, who used to work in solar energy, understand is that the predominant economics associated with a solar project of this sort include tax benefits, as well as the benefit of selling the electricity back to the grid. So Siemens is not creating this panel and is not leasing land from Columbia or whatever the agreement is that's referenced in the original application out of its own generosity. It has a profit motive. So this application, in my mind, unless someone confirms otherwise, because we're not getting a lot of detail, is a commercial use of the property in what is largely a residential space and is abusing the code that was enacted to allow residents to fulfill their own electricity needs on their property. So whether or not Columbia interprets this to mean that they'll generate as much electricity as they need everywhere is an abuse of the reading of the zoning law, in my mind. Further, if the electricity is generated in excess of the need of the property, it will be sold back to the grid at a benefit to presumably Siemens, who is the installer of this facility, based on what I can gather from the limited data in the initial application. The electricity can't magically transport itself to another Columbia campus. It will be sold back to Con Ed at a profit. So the fundamental question of this entire enterprise is, are we willing to allow someone to conduct a commercial enterprise in the middle of Irvington? And what does that say about other properties that might choose to do the same? I don't think it's supported by the code, but if that's the interpretation, I think it opens up a can of worms that's very unattractive. The other points I'd made, and I won't list all of them because I wrote a 5-page letter already, and most of the points have still not been addressed. I didn't feel the need to reiterate them in light of the fact that the application revision is so basic and frankly unimpressive compared to what most people are presenting to this board when they make revisions, is that while this might not impact the property owners who initially were concerned about the facility that would have been installed at the corner of Ardsley Avenue West and Broadway, there are properties across from the southeastmost installation who will look directly on this. This will be visible from their homes even before the foliage, the leaves drop in the fall, and it will likely be visible from the aqueduct. So, one of the main asks in the last meeting was to provide photos of the sightlines from properties. It doesn't take long to do it. My wife and I took pictures of the field at Ardsley Avenue West and sent it very quickly. It doesn't take much to Photoshop some solar panels where they would be. I mean, these are really basic things that don't require provisional approval for Columbia to do. in order to enhance our understanding of what's going on. People who are not large multi-billion-dollar universities are able to provide more detail in their applications. And I would expect Columbia to be able to do the same as us lowly property owners in Irvington.
Well, thank you for your input. I asked the question and Mike Smith asked a question about what's on site on the property itself and what's possibly being used by Columbia at other Columbia sites. Our lawyer will review the code once we get an answer to that question. And that's about that. Thank you. Oh, and if you were listening at the beginning or in the middle somewhere, I recognized that this is relatively incomplete, and that I appreciated the fact that Columbia had all these details missing because they wanted us to take a look at the big picture of where these things are going to be located before they went through a massive effort for all the kinds of details you mentioned and what we mentioned. So there is an appreciation of why there was a lack of detail. I can understand that. Thank you. Sarah, do we have another public?
Yes, the next person to speak is Chet Kerr.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So look, I wrote a letter to the board and I appreciate the board has read that, and I'm not going to repeat that letter. I just have 3 quick points. First, the applicant has said several times that this new revised site plan, which I frankly agree is much better than their past one, is in a maintenance area. And while some of it is not. The western panels next to the community garden and the southeast panels would be put into empty meadows that have, for the 27 years I have been here in Irvington, have been open meadows. I maintained a garden in the community gardens for many years and know that area well. That's one point. Second point is that in response to something that Chairman Manfredi said, I believe the wall along Clinton Avenue West does not extend far enough to block the view of the northern array that they are proposing. And therefore, I think the planning board is correct that will need to have something put in there to block the views of that from Clinton Avenue, which is up higher and looks down even on that property. The third point is that if there are a number of people who access the aqueduct from Hamilton Avenue across Broadway by walking into the Nevis property, and there's an old carriage trail that goes to the north of the community gardens, which goes right through, and you see it's the dashed line on this thing right above the 169.5. That's the old carriage trail that leads down to the aqueduct. That will be blocked by this northern array. And I think because that's used constantly by all number of people who walk into to the Columbia to get to the aqueduct. And so I think one thing the planning board should consider is whether, if that northern array is being put in, there will be an alternative way for people from that part, from Hamilton and across Broadway, to access the aqueduct through the property. Thank you very much.
Okay, Chet, thank you very much. And I'm sure you'll be looking at next time around when the nitty details come in.
Oh, I will.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, next person to speak is Lino Sharetta.
You all hear me?
Yeah, I hear you, but I don't see you.
I'm trying to do that here.
That's not that we need to. I guess the shoe is on the other foot on this application.
I guess so, Mr. Chairman. Again, Lino Sharetta, I don't know why I can't be seen, but you saw what I look like for the prior application. Lino Sharetta, partner with the law firm Blakely, Platt and Schmidt, representing the Ardsley Park Property Owners Association. The planning board this evening has really addressed a lot of our comments. But I do want to focus, and we will follow up in writing, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. You know, one of the fundamental issues here is really whether this constitutes an accessory use in the code, right? We've been hearing a lot about Columbia, and, you know, and I mentioned at the last meeting, and I'm a little surprised as to why the applicant really hasn't addressed this yet. I mean, several months later, I understand they're coming in with a conceptual plan in a different location, which is all good, but the crux of this still stems from the fact that Columbia is a school use. It operates under a special permit. And now we're putting in this, I'll use accessory in quotes, but the question is really whether or not this is in fact accessory and whether this is even permitted pursuant to that special permit by Columbia University. And I know the applicant had made a statement about, you know, the zoning code, and I do take exception to that. And again, it's something that the village is going to have to determine at the outset. But, you know, the code and the section of the code, which is 224(8)B as in boy 10, when it talks about accessory use, it specifically states that it's solar energy equipment, provided that it is used only to provide power for use by owners, lessees, tenants, residents, or other occupants of the premises. And this is what I'm going to highlight, on which it is erected. And I know one of the members of the planning board was harping on that point, but it's an important point and something that needs to be fleshed out, because again, we didn't really get a good answer or about where this power, first of all, how much is it? Where is it going? Is it really addressing this particular site or going elsewhere? And did this provision of the code really contemplate industrial type of solar farms on property? You know, my reading of this, and again, it's something that the village, again, is going to have to look at, you know, was really meant on a residential scale to help homes use renewable energy such as solar. I don't think it ever contemplated what is being proposed here. So that's a threshold question. You have the special permit for Columbia that needs to be looked at. Whether this is legitimately an accessory use needs to be looked at. And you know, the fact that we still don't have an answer to that and an answer to where this power is going from the applicant is a little concerning to the Ardsley Park Property Owners Association. The other thing that was mentioned, I know it's late, but I'll be brief. We asked for, there's a land use agreement that was mentioned by the applicant in their initial application to the planning board. We still don't know what that relationship with that quote unquote land use agreement is between Siemens and Columbia. And I think that's something that the planning board should request and have an understanding of. Again, the issue with respect to the megawattage, the issue of the use, you know, this is the threshold issue. It's the capital U, whether or not this solar farm, industrial solar farm, really is a permitted use in the code. And the other thing I want to state is, you know, I know they reduced the panels, but I think, at least from my calculations, this still falls as a type 1 action under SECRA. And that's something, obviously, as you know, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, you know, that the presumption that is that this is going to have to go through a full environmental review with the POSDEC on this type of project. You know, we talked about the tree removal. I heard that. We need more specificity on that. Also, viewscapes and how this is going to look. And lastly, I just want to note that, you know, we talked about noise impacts in my prior letter to the board, heard nothing about that, and we need to flesh that out. I know the applicant is seeking some type of conceptual approval, but I think it's premature, and we do need some more information. So I thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman, but I think you need to address that threshold issue as to the capital U as in the use. So thank you very much, and appreciate the time.
Thank you. By the way, the first thing on my list of things to ask was to make it known that there's a need for a long form EAF and that an impact statement is not off the table, that we will be evaluating that once we get the long form, not short form EAF type 1 action. And unfortunately, I'm glad you mentioned it because it was on the top of my page to add. So I'm glad you mentioned it and we got it covered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So the code and all the questions we asked about on-site, off-site, I'm sure the village attorney and the attorney for the applicant. We'll be discussing that and we'll see where that goes at the next meeting. Sarah?
Nobody else is raising their hand to speak and there are no more, there are no comments in the chat.
There are other people in person here. Were you for this application? No. Any other, based on the last public comments, does anybody on the board have any questions as a result of we heard from the public?
No question.
I have no question. Nothing. No.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your presentation. You got a lot of homework to do. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Now, if I can find my sheet, it's in great shape. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, number 5, 33 Maple Street. That's 2022-34, 33 Maple Street. Make a note that Kevin Thurman is recused on this, and he's been seating in his chair. Now is Mike Bufupa as an alternate.
Good evening.
We can hear you.
Oh, but
We
you
got
can't see me.
We got your, yeah, there you go.
There we
Got
go.
your
My
audio,
other
we got-
my other camera wasn't working. Sorry. Good evening. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. Yeah, so we're here before you for our clients at 33 Maple. What we're presenting today is a potential FAR addition, attic space and bathroom being added to the upper floor of 33 Maple. This is a project that was brought to the table to you several years ago, I believe 2018, before our clients purchased the property. It was previously approved for a very similar application. However, we've made some changes and represented it to you for hopefully approval again. We received the comments from Han Engineering, most of which we believe we can address pretty easily in our next revision back to you. But we can share our documents and walk you through it right now. Let me just pull up the latest and greatest to show you. I'm sharing my screen now. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So as you're, that's Nevis Labs. So as you can see, this is 33 Maple, which is just off the Dow's Lane border here in Irvington. Just want to pull this up to familiarize you with the location. So the property itself is making no change to present coverage. It is only an addition of FAR, as we mentioned, to the proposed attic area. Here is the existing survey and location, and some neighborhood context for you to understand. Here's Maple, Dow's Lane to the south. You'll see there's several familiar applications that have been approved over time in the region. This is the neighbor's property. This is the addition to the north on 37 Maple, property to the west, and property further down the street. What we're proposing at this time, as you can see in our physical application, here's the existing structure. It's the white structure with the blue trim. Neighbors 37 Maple here, south elevation, neighbor at 31, east elevation, and west elevation. What we're proposing at this time is essentially 2 dormers both east and west. Let me get you to the plan. So we're adding a dormer to the east to provide an additional bathroom. This is essentially a one bathroom for 3 present bedrooms and attic storage. And then you can see this is the dormer addition to the west and the dormer addition to the east. This is very much in keeping with the previous dormer addition that was approved, I believe, in 2018, but the work wasn't carried out before the sale. You can see this here, previous renovation. We're proposing shed dormers in lieu, shed dormers to both the east and west in lieu of the gable end dormer that was approved here. And
Let's
shed dormer.
concentrate on that. Let's concentrate on the difference between the previous approval and the current approval. That gabled approach is a lot different than the current proposal for what faces Maple. I'm not that concerned with what faces the back, but the mass and bulk of what you're proposing, which is different than what was previously approved. There's a lot more appearance situations for mass and bulk with what's proposed and what was previously approved, as you call it, the gabled approach. And actually pointing out 15 Willow was probably not a good idea because it gave me an idea of what it might look like, and I really didn't think that was a great look of what exists at 15 Willow. Before we get into the details of what may be problematic with FAR and height, we need to get past what this looks like. Could you say why you're doing that and what's the justification to change the appearance of what was previously approved? And there isn't. I went up and down that block on Maple, and there wasn't one house on that block that had the essentially. I know it's not a third floor, but the appearance of a third floor. And I just. Yeah, I wasn't very excited with what that looked like either. That's a lot of mass and bulk. And that's the neighbor to the south, I believe.
That's correct. So just to speak to that, the gable forward obviously is a different pitch. However, the width of the gable forward and the width of the dormer forward that we proposed are the same. The bulk in the rear is actually less than what was previously proposed. So yes, there is a stylistic
concerned with what it looks
difference.
like from the street. Sir,
No, I understand.
Let me pull the board on that. Laurie?
I mean, I actually, the bulk of that house doesn't bother me. I think it's very handsome and it's well done. So,
Including the way it was proposed versus what was previously approved.
well, I mean, I see the difference. I'm probably not as, I'd rather hear from the people who actually live on the street and what they're, if they struggle with it more than we do.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It seems a little busy from the surrounding homes.
Right. The first Mike Smith.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to picture. I guess I would like more of an illustration of how the two differ.
When you're referring to the two differ, do you mean how the previous differs
The one
as opposed
previously
to?
approved, the one previously approved and the one that you're currently proposing.
Did you have one sketch up there that showed?
Well, the previously approved
Yeah.
was what you see here. The width, the width is very, very similar. Obviously, the difference is gable forward means peak forward as opposed to the dormer forward. The back of the building, and just to speak to this, it goes edge to edge. You can see it's essentially like pulled like 4 inches off the sides, which it's basically full width. It's not really proposed as any change to that. And what we're proposing is, let me just pull this up. What we're proposing is, and there's the existing, we're proposing a similar width on the front of the building. to what was the gable before. However, it is a shed forward rather than a gable forward. So the peak is not there. That's correct. On the rear of the structure, we've pulled it in about 2 feet on both sides so that it is acting like a dormer. Essentially, the previously approved, it's a dormer in theory, not in practice. So yes, the look is slightly different. However, the bulk and mass of what is being added is not, in our opinion.
How about, can we maybe do it this way? Take either superimpose your current onto the prior or superimpose the prior onto the current.
I think the prior onto the current would be very helpful. If you could.
Yeah, I mean, in our next iteration, we can put a side-by-side comparison so you can see the volume. I mean, the FAR in question is less than what was previously approved.
Well, we'll get into the FAR. We don't agree with your calculation, but I want to get past, I can't get past the visual, never mind the FAR calculations. Let's go on to Mike Bafulco.
I agree with you about the view. I was going to say, in addition to the superimposed image, if you could kind of flatten it into 2 dimensions and give us a comparison of the square footage taken up by the addition on the old one, the new one, because it looks like it's about a third more than it was, and the square footage left of view of the roof is significantly less of the new one. And I think that's the visual impact that we're talking about.
Yeah, you know, what's the inside impact by sticking with the original?
Well, that's essentially what I'm addressing, is that the FAR and square footage impact is less. The visual impact is different because the head heights are different on the interior. However,
we'll talk about FAR when we get to it, but I want to stay on the visual right now. Because like I said, I personally can't get past what it looks like. The board may have a different opinion, obviously, some of us do. That's why there's 5 of us.
Can I ask another question?
Go right ahead, Lori.
I'm just wondering if, given what you're hearing, is there a way to, and you did say that the back changed and actually got smaller. Is there a way to accomplish what you're trying to do by putting more emphasis on the back of the house instead of the front?
Potentially. I mean, the advantage, I guess what I was inferring before was the look on the front of the house, yes, is different than what was previously approved. However, the bulk is no different. I don't want to sound repetitive or keep beating a dead horse, but it sounds like that the board, and maybe not everybody on the board, but the board is concerned with the dormer shape as opposed to the overall size, because the size doesn't change for us from a footprint standpoint.
The shape does make a difference of how it looks.
No, I understand that, but I guess what I'm referring to is what's the
downside of going with the previous approval?
From a physical interior perspective, the head height is lower, and so therefore the bulk volume, not the FAR, is less on the front of the building. The back of the building is less than it was previously. So we have some sort of flexibility to changing what it is. The bigger concern is just getting an overall okay for an FAR increase in general. That's the goal. Like the goal is to get storage and another bathroom upstairs just for the homeowner.
Mike, you were going down the road of a rendering of some sort so we can see better. This Mike Smith.
Right.
You want to elaborate on that so it comes in the next time?
Well, I think we had asked for the superimpose.
So we're not looking for a rendering.
Oh, rendering. Well, I would love a rendering, but.
Well, I think we can. I think we can clearly overlay the 2 of them, so you can see like previous and present up against one another, and you can see that their size is relatively the same. Granted, the graphic nature of what was proposed previously is not the same as what we proposed. Obviously, drawing styles are different. And we can do a A to B comparison, so you can see that the size and scale are the same, or what their equivalent nature is, one versus another.
You're missing my point. The numbers are not not my issue. My issue is how it looks from the street.
I understand that. What I'm suggesting is that
Even
you
though I'm
can-
an engineer, I'm ignoring the numbers and I'm looking at it from a visual aesthetic point of view. Like most engineers look at the numbers, but I guess I'm an exception.
No, I totally understand. What we're suggesting is that we can overlay the previous elevation with our present so that you can see both, and then also a comparison of the numbers to understand as well, so you can have both on a revision back to you. Like we were trying to address with the previous was an understanding that the bulk of the work itself was previously approved. Now the look is a different story. Obviously, we need to handle both ends of that, but what we just wanted to bring to your attention was that, you know, this is not unreasonable for the community, the neighborhood, and had previously been approved at a certain scale. Now we have flexibility as it comes to aesthetics and overall scale, and a simple drawing of one versus another would, you know, explain that more clearly. I obviously don't have that in front of us right now, but that doesn't mean we can't have it for the next.
Let's not make it a simple drawing. Okay, now we got past that, and we're not past it, but you need to address it. There are issues with the FAR calculation and the height situation. And Ed, will you go into that?
Certainly. So the FAR calculations for our gross calculations, the gross square footage of the floor. When we're calculating attics, which this is prior to the construction, the attics are either full cover, full FAR or half FAR, depending on the access. So there should be no reason why the FAR goes down. More importantly, the FAR should either stay the same or go up. If there's a staircase there originally, it should stay the same. So you need to fine tune that. You need to look at that in the light of an attic, because you're calling it a half story. Unless you're calling it a full story, then you have a 3-story building. So when you subtract the FAR, you're going for a full story, even though your ceiling height is under 7'6". So read the definition of gross area of FAR, then read the area of attic. Was there a staircase to the attic now, or is it a pull down stair?
It's not a stair proper. It's more like a ladder. It's not egress. It's in a closet. It needs to be. We're proposing it as a stair.
Right. So the FAR is half of the gross square footage. So we can sit down and go over this together if you want to come to the office. I'll show you on the code where it says the FAR is the gross area. The gross area shouldn't change. The gross area shouldn't change. So probably don't need an FAR variance, but you might be over, you might be under. We have to check that. Then you didn't include what's called the shed on your application, and on the last application was called a garage. That FAR counts and then it's subtracted as needed. So we're not sure if the existing garage is over the 250 square feet or not. So you need to input that data, then take it out. So we didn't see that on your calculations either.
Our understanding was that it's not as a garage, as opposed to what the previous application was. So my knowledge of what the previous was is different.
Yeah, but it's still FAR, whether it's a shed or a garage. You want it to be a garage if you want to subtract 250 square feet. If you want it to be a shed, it doesn't count, it doesn't subtract at all. Okay, so
that's the determination of the owner to work on. I get it.
Right. Again, I think it's just fine tuning the numbers.
Right.
No,
we understand. We understand that we may be over one way or another, and we're not necessarily worried about getting a variance if needed.
The last application referenced that it wasn't increasing it. Therefore, it didn't need a variance.
Understood. And I don't, again, as I said, like, I don't 100% know what was previously approved. I just know what it looked like.
Happy to go through the numbers with you.
Got it.
So anyway, in basics, the numbers just need to be correct, and then we'll take it from there.
Understood.
What about the height issue of 3 stories versus 2.5?
So in the zoning code, it says any floor area 50% more or more over 7'6". The proposal here is 7 foot. So there's no 50% over 7'6". So it doesn't count as a story. It could be exploiting a hiccup in cross code changes between the state and the zoning code. It's still a story in the state code, but that's for the next review after they get past the planning board. Mike.
Yeah, what we were proposing was
James and I
leaving
had a
the
discussion
original.
about that.
That's correct. And we were proposing leaving the original ridge as is without any changes to that, maintaining that it is an attic space. And our understanding was that it met that. But clearing up the FAR is a different story. Clearly, we need to work on the numbers, but we'll figure that out.
So just schedule a time early next week.
Okay.
Sounds good.
You need to address the, moving on, you need to address the fact that you're in the View Preservation District. You just need to address it and show that you're not doing anything to hinder the, or limiting the view of uphill people. And there's a large tree in the front during construction. That tree, you have to provide root protection for that tree.
Noted.
Okay. Any further questions from the board, Lori?
No further.
And
Nothing at this.
Mike?
Nothing.
And Mike?
Nope.
Sarah, anything in the public?
Somebody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Is anybody here in person? No. Okay, you have your homework. Thank you very much.
Noted. Thanks. See you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Good job.
The next is 9 Hancock, that's 2022-33.
Good evening. Is it okay to start?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, good evening. I'm Mike Segan. Good evening to Mr. Chairman and board. I'm Mike Segan from Richter and Segan. We are landscape architects working with Nicholas and Allison Moore. I will be providing a brief overview of the site design and some of the permitting requirements and issues on this project. Following me will be Jason Snyder from Beatty and Watson on drainage and sedimentation erosion control. Brief overview of that. Also, I believe in the audience is both Nicholas and Allison Moore, the owners and applicants. The application is for site development plan approval for site improvements at 9 Hancock Place. The 1 acre parcel is in the IF 40 residential zone. It's a single family home. The project is also located within the View Preservation Overlay District. However, there will be no impact to the Hudson River views because there are no sight lines to the property from the river due to topography, vegetation, and numerous obstructions and buildings in the distance between the parcel and the river. The property currently contains a 2-story single-family brick house as shown in the photograph, and a 1-story brick garage, which is off to the right of the house as you look at the photograph. Both were built in 1907. We're very sensitive to the history and the materials in the property and are carried throughout the proposed changes. There are no proposed changes to the house or garage. All the proposed changes that are part of this application are site improvements. Next. This is a survey for the property. It shows the existing conditions, including the house, the porches, and the garage. As I mentioned, there are no proposed changes to the house or garage or porches. There's a circular drive in front of the house that includes parking for 3 cars. This is an existing non-conforming situation, which will be addressed in the proposed plan. One of the major impetuses for this project is to address some very significant drainage issues and flooding in the basement of the dwelling. This is caused by both surface and subsurface water movement. To address this issue, all the landscaping around the house will need to be removed and the area redesigned and regraded, and the surface as well as a subsurface drainage system installed. Jason will discuss this drainage system in more detail shortly. This is really the major reason that drives many of the proposed changes and site improvements that are in front of the board, especially in the front yard and around the house. We are also working with an existing non-conforming issue with the garage being very close to the property line. I'm sure this property was built before, certainly before current zoning and probably any zoning. And we're non-conforming with not only the garage location, but the driveway, which is within 2.5 feet of the property line, existing driveway. And as the consultant pointed out, utilities behind the garage, we're not quite sure where they come into play, but the condensing units were existing there when the Moores bought the property in 2015. They've since added a generator and have a permit for that. So we're not sure what, if and what a variance would be required for that. Next. This just shows for the board the photo of the existing conditions in front of the house where much of the drainage issues occur. All the landscaping, as I mentioned, will be removed here. The area will be redesigned and regraded, and the circular driveway will be moved away from the house. And the 3 parking spaces that are shown here will be relocated. One of them out of the front yard, and 2, we think a better location in the front yard. Next. Here's a proposed site plan. There are really no new components being added in the proposed plan that don't already exist, just a redesign and relocation of the existing site improvements. And as mentioned, all the plantings around the house will be removed and the entire area re-landscaped. The circular driveway will be moved away from the foundation for drainage purposes, and 2 of the 3 parking spaces relocated off to the south in the redesigned front yard. This reduces the number of really non-conforming spaces in the front yard and also reduces the visual impact of the parking as it's viewed from the street. The balance of the site hardscape improvements around the property involve a redesign and enlargement of the back terrace and the replacement of the walks on both sides of the house that connect from the back to the front. All the proposed pavement on the site, including the bluestone walks, are pervious to encourage infiltration and assist in the stormwater management operations. Except for the existing driveway right in front of the house, we don't want any infiltration into the ground, obviously, as we're trying to mitigate the drainage problems at the house. The uncovered deck on the north side of the house will be rebuilt as part of this application with minor modifications from the original design. Next, Rachel. This is a photograph of that north deck that has actually existed in 2019 and shown on the survey. It has since collapsed and it had to be replaced by a temporary smaller deck to provide safe access to the house. The proposed uncovered deck will extend 18 inches beyond this existing, which is really in the color blue here. And there'll be one central set of steps into the house. Next. The rebuilt deck on the north side will feature a white decorative railing to closely match the historic rail on the southern porch shown here. The south porch will not be modified. The two major porches on the property will not be at all modified as part of this application. However, all the landscape in this area will be removed and replaced because of the drainage, subsurface drainage removals and changes that have to be done. Next. This is the demolition and site preparation plan. The 8 protected trees shown here with the X's through them are proposed to be removed. It includes the 8 you see here, 1 dead tree along the back border. There are 2 that need to be removed for the drainage work around the house. The balance of the 5 are in poor or declining condition. All the trees will be replaced with healthy, appropriate species. While we are removing 8 trees, we're actually adding overall in the entire site, including the heavy plantings on the back border, 59 new deciduous and evergreen trees in the proposed landscape plan as a major re-landscaping effort. Next. Next, here we go. These are just examples of 3 of the trees we are replacing or propose to replace. One on the left is in the right-of-way of Hancock Place and has been significantly damaged. If you look at the top, and has rotten or problems coming down the middle. It will be replaced with 2 new street trees. The tree on the very far right is dead along the back border and should be removed. Next.
Hold on a second. That is that front tree in the village right away?
It is.
Village tree?
It is.
Well, I guess you need a permission from the village if it's a village tree.
Yes, we need to confirm what that process is. So we'll
Have that removed. That's not
Yes.
for me. I'm just saying it's a village tree.
yes, we're aware of that. And we'll go through whatever process we need. But thank you for the reminder. Next, please. This site illustrative plan shows the existing trees to be preserved, and there are many on the site, as well as all the proposed plantings, the tree shrub perennials, and ground cover. There is a detailed planting plan that is part of the submission. A feature of the plan is extensive plantings in the backyard and restoration of the evergreen dominated side and back border plantings that were historically on the property. Next. This photograph, this old photograph really shows that back border we are proposing to restore. And we really look at this for inspiration. Unfortunately, many of these plants no longer exist, but are proposed to be restored as part of the re-landscaping plan. Next. The proposed landscape material and site details, including the fencing around the perimeter and interior to the site, are designed to reflect the traditional and historic character of the property and integrate into the surrounding neighborhood character as well. This includes on the lower right side, ornamental metal picket fencing that'll be around the perimeter of the site, brick and ornamental picket fencing shown in the lower left side that are really to separate the front and the backyard and enclose the backyard. In the upper left is a lattice style fence around the service area in front, which duplicates historic fencing located in the same area on the property when the property was originally built. Next. This old photograph.
Ouch.
Yeah,
Mine's
this,
older than that.
As you can imagine, this is from the early 1900s, probably shortly after the house was built. And you see that lattice fence on the right-hand corner. We're literally duplicating in that same location to screen the service area that's around the right side. So the plan, as you'll see, and if you looked at it, is very sensitive to the historic details on the property. Next, please. So that concludes an overview of the plan and the proposed improvements. There are 2 variances that the application requests. There may be an additional one based on comments that we got from Han Engineering. The first is for the proposed parking in the front yard. There are 3 non-conforming spaces now. We're eliminating 1 in the front yard and relocating 2 to the south side there. We think this is a much better situation and less visible as you look at the house from the road. The second variance relates to the exceeding the maximum coverage amount. The coverage allowed on this lot is 11.1%. The existing coverage is already, from the historical development of the property, is already at 13.2%, which exceeds this coverage by 2.1%. The proposed coverage is 18.7% with the proposed improvements as we showed. So the amount is 7.7% over the maximum, or 5.4% increase. Now, to look at it in a different way so we don't get confused with numbers, because I usually do, the percentage increase in coverage allowable is 69%, or it's about 42% greater than the existing coverage on the site. The proposed plan, actually, we've worked hard on this, and the clients have been very supportive of this. They actually reduce the impervious coverage on the site. All the coverage that exceeds your definition of coverage on the site is permeable pavement. However, unlike some other communities, your regulations do not give any credit for pervious pavement and the benefits that may be. So that's just so you know that all the proposed pavement except for the driveway in front is proposed to be pervious, and all the stormwater management benefits from that. We think, in addition to those 2 variances, the Han Engineering report pointed out a possible variance that's going to be required along the north property line. The existing garage, obviously, and the driveway pavement there are within 4 feet of the property line. We are reconstructing that driveway, so I don't know if that triggers a variance, even though it's an existing non-conforming location that's not changing. They also mentioned that the utilities behind the garage, those are existing now. As I mentioned, the condensing units right behind the garage existed on the property when the Moores bought the property in 2015. The generator was added in 2019, and that was done with a permit from the town. So we're not aware of any a variance that might be needed for that, but we look for some direction from the board.
So I can address those 2 before you move on. The driveway is getting longer, so you have additional encroachment into the side yard setback of less than 4 feet, of more than 4 feet. But less than, I'm sorry, you're encroaching into 4 feet. And in the back where the generator and the air compressors are, is that a slab on grade there now? Because that wasn't on the original generator.
Yeah,
approval.
it was.
So that piece will have to be legalized.
Yeah, it was installed. It has a permit. It was installed shortly after the survey was done.
That grade area that all the air conditioners and the generators sit on, is that a slab or is that just grade for?
Oh, that's just gravel. that's just gravel.
Okay, it should be labeled better. It
Okay.
has the appearance of being a slab.
Yep.
So we
Will
can
do.
remove that. No, that's okay. It's this surrounding area.
Yes, that, again, that's just gravel. That's,
No, we just want to get it all in one shot. We don't want you to come back.
yep,
So clarify
No,
that.
will do. So that concludes the overview. Next, I just wanted to say one comment before I turn it over to the engineer. Is that while if you go to the next one, Rachel, please. This just shows the site and its surrounding neighborhood contents. And we think the more resident is a very positive fit into the Hancock Place neighborhood as it currently exists. And we think all the landscape improvements in the plan will only reinforce that positive contribution. So I don't know if you want to have any questions now, or you want to wait till the end of the presentation. The engineers, Jason is going to go next. So, but I'd be happy to answer questions either now or later.
I'll do the screening and the planting. I have some notes here that I've seen the planting plan. It was quite extensive. I don't know if that's satisfied that we need a tree schedule. We might need a tree schedule more extensive than what you already have for species size of what's coming out and what's going in terms of actual species. You said you get a general description of what's going in, but I think we need a specific description of what's going in and its specific size of the trees. And the south seems to be taken care of for screening of the proposed parking area. In the north, is there any screening up there? And there's some notations, EFC and CAK. Do you have any idea what those nomenclature means?
Yeah, that wasn't proposed screening. It is actually they've got a good relationship with their neighbor, and the neighbor has screening on their side of the property. We could add fencing there. We weren't putting fencing in there. We're adding more narrow. It's a very narrow area, but we certainly could if the board felt that should be done.
I don't know, fencing that you could hit with your car. I don't know, for something a little softer. Anyway, what is the CAK and EFC?
It's an ornamental grass actually, in a ground cover. It's a very narrow upright grass that gets about 5-6 feet tall. So you'll have that separation.
So maybe that could be your screening here instead of a fence.
Yeah, and the beauty of that is it really stays up year round, and it's up when people are outside. So that was the
All
intent.
right, maybe you can be more specific about that grass than nomenclature that nobody understood.
Okay. By the way, the plant list does for proposed plants spell out the size and quantity, etc. Yeah, I think the question from the landscape architect that reviewed the plan was on the existing trees to be removed, an arborist report on that. I think we need to hook back with her and just confirm what her comments.
Okay. I knew it was one or the other, so, okay. Let's do the engineering now. I think anybody got any questions on the planting plan on the board?
No.
Okay, let's go on to the engineering.
Good evening, Jason Snyder with Beatty and Watson. So we have the review memo from Han Engineering. It all seems pretty straightforward. Basically, we have proposed a subsurface stormwater infiltration system where we will be capturing the runoff from the driveway and Hancock Place, implementing various catch basins and trench drains in the driveway and parking areas. We will be conveying and from the roof runoff, which will be conveyed to the rear yard where the infiltration system is. That'll be taking care of the surface runoff. As far as the groundwater and the mitigation of the drainage around the foundation, we will be proposing a exterior curtain drain, which will be discharged to daylight to the rear yard, where it will discharge to daylight to a stabilized area in the landscaped areas. So that's about it. We will have to patch up our stormwater report a bit to make sure that we include all the stormwater management guidelines. I think we were doing initially we were doing a stormwater quality volume, but we were instructed of the village's requirements for the stormwater management plan, and we now have that, so we'll be implementing that.
Jason, we can go through the details offline. I don't
Yeah.
think we need to do everything here.
Sure.
Okay. Doug, take a look at those discharges to daylight. As you know, it's a hill that goes down to the next house on the next street. We want to make sure that it stays on the property and doesn't go downhill to the next property. And siltation, you got the siltation requirements?
Yes. Yeah, we got that on there. Yep.
Okay, because you're really over on the coverage, we'd like to see a neighborhood comparison chart, and when you meet to clear up the coverage needs some work, and you're going to go over that with Ed, and he'll tell you how what we expect on a neighborhood comparison of various neighbors and their coverage. Are you out of whack with the neighborhood on coverage, or are you under, or are you similar? We'd like to see that, so that it's not a massive difference from the character of the neighbor as it exists. So we'd like to see that comparison. Okay, anything else?
You show some examples of different fences. I'm a little confused about where they are all going. I understand where the lattice fence is going, but then you showed some other fencing. And I was wondering if you could just kind of point out where you're adding that.
Mike, you are muted.
There you go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Starting on the north side of the property, we're actually utilizing a wrought iron picket fence along the north boundary that was installed by the existing neighbor. So there's no need to add a fence there to close the property. We're just plugging into that. We are putting in for the adjacent neighbor a low screen that screens a generator, and you can see that just in that generator area. And also, and that's a board fence, and also just below screening that area from the property as well. So on two sides. At the back of the property, on the west side, we're continuing the picket iron fence that was installed by the adjacent neighbor. And then we're continuing that around the corner up to a point where you get up to where Rachel's moving that dial, where there's a view into the garage and parking in the neighbor's property. And then from that point up to the midpoint, or the brick columns, etc., is a solid board fence to screen that area of the property. And then we're supplementing obviously evergreen trees and plantings in front of that. From that point to the front of the property, we're continuing, well, now Rachel's tracing really the brick and picket fence that we showed you, which will enclose or separate the front of the property to the back of the property. So that's internal to the property itself, and that we think has a really kind of historical feel and matches the architecture and the approach there. So that's and then there's a segment of that on the other side to totally enclose the back of the property as well, of the brick and picket fence. Does that help?
Yeah, that helped a lot. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay.
No questions.
Mike Smith?
Yeah.
So, Mr. Seegan, you said that there would be an increase, a 42% increase in coverage. So what
Yes.
is the biggest component of that?
I would say it's just enlarging things that are already there. The walks are really 1907 kind of width. Everything's smaller in width, and the back terrace is quite small, not all that usable. So all that has been increased. We're enlarging the porch a bit, and I would say the drive is widened a little bit as well too. So I think it's a little bit everywhere. There's no one big thing that's results in that. And we've added a walk in the front of the house out to the road. And we thought that was a nice feature, a bluestone walk out to the curb in the road.
And just roughly, I'm gonna a guesstimate of that increase in coverage. How much would you say is impervious, and how much would you say is pervious?
Everything over the amount. If we didn't count the impervious coverage, we would not be over the literally the 11.1% the maximum allowable. So we're just under the amount if you don't count the permeable pavement.
Okay, thank you.
From a practical point of view, pervious pavement over time gets clogged and is less efficient. And in the wintertime, it freezes. So maybe that's why the villages, we count it as coverage. And probably should plan for that, for drainage in the wintertime off of the back patio.
Yeah, I think the engineers have accounted for that as well.
Okay. The other questions? Kevin, you're not Mike.
Easy. No question.
Okay. Ed, you're okay? They're gonna
Yeah,
come to you for coverage.
Company with coverage.
There's some details.
They're missing a little bit of coverage between the driveway and the road. That wasn't in their calculation.
Yeah,
and then we need to figure out what's going on with that gray area behind the garage.
Yeah, and you'll go over what a comparison chart looks like.
Yeah, I'll show them how to do it.
Sarah, any public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Do the homeowners that are here would like to say anything?
Thank you.
Let the record show he said no. And a thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I guess we're done with this. Thank you.
I started at 5 in the morning.
Thank you.
It's still 2 more.
I was gonna think of taking a break, but I think the next 2 will go along pretty good.
Good.
Not.
The game is gonna be over by the time we're finished.
It's 5-0.
Well, that's good. You gave me the score, but you didn't,
5-0 who?
you didn't say who.
Yes, goes.
Who?
Yes, goes.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Oh, good. I'll keep the series going.
for those who didn't hear that, the Astros are winning 5-0. All right, next one.
Yeah.
Yeah. 242 Harriman Road. That's 2022-32. Wasn't there a muscle car with an engine of 242? Yeah. That Oldsmobile.
I think so. Yeah, that rings a bell.
Yeah, anyway, yeah, they got about 2 gallons on a mile. I think my friend had a 242.
I love the fact that they have that old photo.
Yeah, that's not- yeah.
I swear that was Caesar in the back seat.
I feel like I was in the back seat. Hello, I see you. You want to
Hi
check
there.
your audio?
Hi.
Still up,
Another
still up.
That's all day today.
All right, we're on 242. Please introduce yourself and make a presentation. Thank you.
My name is Susan Jankel. I'm a landscape architect and urban planner with Aspect 120 Landscape Architecture. And I'm representing Nancy Rosner, who lives at 242 Harriman Road. And I will share my screen. Just a moment. Okay, so what you're looking at is the front view of the house at Harriman Road. The location, just for reference, is just west of the reservoir. I'm sorry, just east. It's too late for me. Just west of the reservoir. Yes, that's where we are. And how you'll note that we are here for a site plan approval for the expansion of a driveway to allow additional parking space, the construction of a 260-foot wood deck and a 3-foot high fence to enclose part of the rear yard for a small dog. The scope of the project is exclusively for site improvements, and there's no change in the structure at all. There is no lighting included in this proposal. So this is a very beautiful property. It's just a hard one to comply with the zoning code, and I'm going to let you know why that is. I think you see immediately that is a triangle, not a rectangle. That makes it hard to determine what's the front, sides, and backs of the property. About half, 2/3 of the property is wooded, and there are a number of large rock outcroppings on the site. The existing house that you see here is Harriman Road. On this side, here is the existing house. What I am showing here is that currently it intrudes into the setback in these pink areas, shows you where it intrudes in the setback lines. The existing driveway is 22.5%. which is very, very steep for a driveway. There are spaces for 2 cars in the garage, but if any car is parked outside of the garage, that is impossible to use the garage. So those are the only real spaces near the house. And then there's 1 parking space down by Harriman Road, which requires pretty skilled maneuvering or backing into Harriman Road. For trucks like an Amazon truck or a UPS truck, if they wanted to park in there, it would entail pulling out into Harriman Road. So it's a difficult site, and that's how Ms. Rosner bought the difficult site, because it is a beautiful site as well. Let me show you the image of the front of the house. Here is the front of the house to give you a better understanding. There really is no front yard. It's just a driveway that leads up to the main entrance of the house. This is the parking spot that's right at the edge of Harriman Road. And here is the garage. Ms. Rosner has a Mini, which is great because it's able to maneuver on the site. But it is, I'm able to back up a couple of times back and forth and turn around in this area to go back down and not have to drive backwards or reverse into Harriman Road if there's no cars in this space right here. Another thing I just want to show you on this picture is that slope of 22.5% that exists, and just that's what a 22.5% slope looks like. So the rear of the house, Again, we're within the setback line. This is where we're proposing a deck. It is immediately next to the property line because there is really no rear of the house or rear yard per se. The existing conditions here, we have existing stone walls that are in need of repair and some fencing here that is in need of repair, honestly, as well. So we're looking to renovate or recreate this area of the backyard. You could see here is, sorry about that, here is looking back from that stone wall from just on the neighboring property back to the house. And this is the area that I'll show you. We're proposing a small deck. And here is on the other side of this wall, right here, on the other side of this fence, you'll see there's a drop. There are stairs that go to a area where there's utilities that have to be maintained once in a while. It's not a very high use area. And I think a big opportunity on the site is to actually address the woodlands, because right now the woodlands are basically not even really recognized as part of the site, how the homeowner uses her site. So another complexity of the site is the pre-construction conditions is on the left, and the post-construction conditions is on the right. At the point of purchase of the house, the paving, and also in the past 2 years, the paving was 1,897 square feet. It has been reduced in the past year and a half, doing improvements that did not need board approval by removing paving and putting planting in. You'll see that we are actually reducing the total area required for drainage by almost 900 square feet on the site. So we think that so many great improvements have been made already, but we do realize that this is going to require a variance nonetheless. So just a moment. So our proposal here, this is the existing conditions. This is the proposed. The only thing that we are looking to do, there are two items really. One is to create a parking space up here closer to the house so somebody can park and still come out and turn around. So somebody here could drive up and turn around and not have to, at least less often, have to back out into Harriman Road. So that is one improvement that we are requesting approval for. The other is creating a 260 square foot wood deck that would give a view of the woodlands here and allow Ms. Rosner to use this space, and this space would be the area where her small dog would be running around with a 3-foot high perimeter fence around this area to contain the dog. We recognize, well, we received the review memo from Han Engineering, and we can comply with pretty much all of those comments in our next submission. This submission really was to get the ball rolling, to understand where we have to go, hopefully to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals to apply for the variances required, which is a rear yard variance for the deck, a front yard variance for the parking space, and a variance because I really don't know how this one works. We're reducing the coverage, but it's still over the allowable coverage. So I'm not sure if that's a variance or not, but the area of coverage, the location of the coverage is changing a little bit. I also believe we will need to appear before the Architecture Review Board, but I am looking for guidance on that. And that is what I have for you.
Okay, you need to clarify the coverage. It needs some work. What's going out, what's going in, and there's some missing items, and probably meet offline with our building inspector to go over the coverage issues.
Yep.
And you're right, it's a side yard / rear yard because of the shape of your That's a variance.
On your rear yard.
Huh?
Yeah, on a corner lot, you're required a rear yard.
Yes.
So it's a side rear yard.
In the parking in the front yard variance. Other than that,
And I'll
I'm
also
gonna ask-
add that we are in communication with the neighbor, and the neighbor will be providing a letter saying that they are, have no problem with any of this.
okay, thank you. I'm gonna ask the board if there's any questions on this.
I have no question.
No questions.
No questions, but if you want to come to my house, you'll see a 23-degree, is it 23 driveway?
Kevin?
Not as long as,
Right.
I'm 94 Harriman, at 242, it's a lot long.
Right.
No questions. Sarah?
There's nobody raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, before you go on to any other boards, we like to see the coverage numbers to be correct. So you're gonna need to correct those, make sure we're satisfied, the building inspector is satisfied with the coverage. Because as you said, it is over and will require a variance.
Yeah, we just want to make sure.
We just want to see how much of a.
Provide a breakdown, identify the breakdown.
Yep.
I can send you
I
some
believe
examples.
it is here. I'm gonna give you.
A pictorial breakdown with the.
A pictorial breakdown. Okay, I could do that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Mike, you were gonna.
Yeah, and do you know when the ZBA meeting is in December?
Deadline's Monday. The December meeting is probably canceled. It is canceled.
Okay,
Yes.
So they're not losing any time.
right.
They're not losing it, but yeah,
they are.
if you get them on the ZBA for Monday,
This Monday.
this Monday's the deadline.
Oh, this Monday is the deadline, not the meeting.
Right, so if you put her, she can get all that information to me by Friday, I can write the denial letter by Friday. And she can come in Monday to make her submission.
What is the coverage?
Susan, can you get that coverage breakdown by Friday?
I can get that coverage breakdown by Friday. The only problem
You
is
get
that
the
I.
application for the ZBA by Monday?
Yes, I do have a conflict though on Monday evening.
It's just a deadline. It's a
Oh, it's a
deadline.
deadline. Okay, that's great. Yes, I could definitely get it to you by Friday.
Yeah.
And the only thing that
Okay,
you required
okay.
is a diagrammatic breakdown of what this chart is pretty much saying here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
not a
just-
problem.
I don't think anybody has a problem with what you're proposing. It's just the numbers need to be right.
You
Yep,
need to make
I-
sure that it's easy
I
for the.
I
zoning
understand that
to read.
completely. Yep.
Am I correct? Nobody has a problem with that?
Yeah,
Oh, perfect.
all makes sense.
Right, the board is in agreement, and would like to move it along. So if you can get that straightened out with Ed, on the condition that you straighten it out with Ed, I have no problem with going to the zoning board.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And Nancy really appreciates it as well.
And just to double check again, any public on this project?
No.
Okay, well, get your pencil sharpened and meet with Ed.
Yep.
And we need to move, the only reason I'm moving this along is we got to keep that dog happy in the back.
Right, right. And I have to tell you, it's been a very entertaining meeting. Thank you. Thank you for the entertainment tonight.
Well, I'm glad the wait was worth it.
So worth it. Okay, thank you so much. I'll be seeing you guys soon.
All right, thank you very much.
Let's change this down.
The final application is 9 Gray Rock Terrace. It's 2022-31. The last one.
Needs to be.
Hello again.
Hi.
Good evening. Hopefully
Hey.
this will be short and sweet.
Do
Get
you
you guys
really
out of
think
here.
so? I got a list of 20 pages here of questions.
No, this is the shortest one I've ever gotten back from you guys.
Go ahead, I'm kidding.
I am too. Yeah, so essentially this was, we had applied for our client to repair a retaining wall that was in disrepair. And it came to our attention at that time that there was an undocumented patio in their rear yard. In order to get the permit for the retaining wall, we came to the planning board to legalize this patio. I just shared my screen. This is the retaining wall in disrepair, which is not necessarily part of this application, but is included and is now being permitted separately. And now what you see before you is the undocumented patio in question. Now, this patio has been in place for approximately 29 years, I believe. And it's just been brought to our attention now that it was undocumented. So what we did was a quick presentation and coverage calculations to try to bring it into compliance at 9 Gray Rock. So that's what we're bringing to the table, is the legalization of this patio. Now we understand that this property has been essentially over on coverage since day one from its build out in the early 90s. So we're just noting that. We understand that this requires a variance to be legalized as such. And the couple of comments that did come back from Han yesterday are mostly clarifications as to how we are noting this documentation. And we believe we can address them in the next submission, if not right now, but that's it. So.
Well, there's a need for the survey to be completed. You'll need to meet with Ed as to what we need to.
Well, we had just to, sorry to jump on you.
I'm asking Ed to opine on the survey.
So because it's already existing, we can just require it as it's required already at the final inspection.
Yeah.
All right, save them doing it twice.
All right.
I appreciate that. That's what I was going to note, is because we had a previously approved application to redo the driveway retaining walls. So we've ordering a survey for that. So we didn't want to do it twice. So I appreciate that.
Okay, you can go to the ZBA for the variance on the coverage and then come back and we'll do a resolution when you come back with the ZBA.
Deadline's Monday.
And the deadline's Monday, if you didn't hear it previously.
I did hear that previously. I will do my best to get everything in by Monday.
Any questions from the board?
No question.
I have no questions. No questions.
No. Sarah, any public?
No.
Okay, get your application to GBA and we'll see you next time. That's assuming you, they don't make any changes.
Assuming I get there in time.
Well,
sounds good.
You got 6 days. You should be able to meet it. Okay, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a good one. Thank you.
All right, that concludes our agenda. So the planning board meeting.
Caesar?
She just put the shredder on for the notes she was taking. That concludes the Irvington Planning Board meeting of November 2nd. We are done and finished. Until next time. Thank you.